Hello, my dear friends. How are you all? I hope you all are doing well. So, I welcome you all to a new amazing course, and that is Laravel version number 12 of Crash Course. So, inside this Crash Course, you will find much more things like to create a CRUD application, how to create basic APIs, how to create APIs using Sanctum authentication, how to create APIs using passport authentication, and finally, how to create APIs using JWT. So inside this interesting journey, inside this complete course, you will get much more things, much more resources of Laravel to create a web-based application and to create REST APIs, including all types of authentication. Now, if I talk about the code syllabus, so first we'll cover that how to create a CRUD application and also include the concept of base authentication, which means that to perform this work management app, to perform any action like create operation, list operation, update operation, or delete operation, first thing first, user must be logged in, email must be verified. So the first application what we'll create inside this complete course will be our blog management app, a CRUD application using base authentication. Inside our second module, we'll create CRUD APIs, which is going to not include any authentication. So it is some kind of basic APIs inside Laravel version number 12. And inside next module, we'll see some type of authentication. It means how to create APIs using Sanctum authentication. And while covering Sanctum authentication APIs, we'll see the concept of registration API, login API, profile API, and logout API. Now then after, I'll talk about the concept of REST APIs using passport authentication. So inside passport authentication, we'll include the concept of registration API, login API, refresh token API, profile API, and logout API. And additionally, also we'll discuss a concept that if we want to upload some type of profile image inside API, how to upload profile image and how to store inside database. And finally, inside this course, we'll see the concept of JSON Web Token, which means how to use JSON Web Token JWT to create REST APIs inside this version number 12 application. So inside last module, we'll cover the APIs as registration API, login API, profile API, refresh token API, and logout API. So without wasting any time, first let's have a look all the new features which is included inside this version number 12 application. Now first, if I talk about the landing page of this official website that is laravel.com, now you can see that it is completely updated. Now here we have an article. I will drop this article link into this video description. You will find all the newly added features inside this version number 12 all listed inside this article. Now we can see here we have the first point that is asynchronous caching for real-time performance. It was before and now inside version number 12 it is something like this. Then here inside second point is streamline dependency injection with PHP 8 features. So it was before and now it is inside this version number 12 application. So step by step inside this article, inside this complete article, you will find all the updates basically this article has maintained. Now let's go and deep into our the code section step by step from where we have to first start the CRUD application. Then we have to go step by step to create all the APIs including all types of automation. And one more thing, before going further, I strongly request please hit the like button to like this video, subscribe to this channel so that I will create much more amazing courses for you. So everything has been done. Now let's get into the interesting journey into this interesting course. Alright friends, from this video topic, we'll start the concept of development journey of this level 12th version. So here, inside this first video course, I'll try to create a code-based application that will be a blog management app which also includes the concept of authentication and sending email process. So first thing first, before creating this CRUD-based application, I want a setup. So here, I'm inside official website of Laravel and that is laravel.com. So we can see like the landing page of this framework now completely updated. Now the question is where we can find the documentation. So simply click on developers, then click on documentation. Now I'm inside the documentation part of this version 12.x. So simply to install this framework, to install this version, we have two options. First, either using Laravel installer or by using Composer. So I will prefer inside this complete course by using Composer. Now to create a project, simply let's go back to project terminal. So I'm inside this folder and right now this folder is completely empty. So let's create a subfolder and inside that subfolder we'll create our blog management app. So what I will do, as I told that we have two processes to install this 12th version, that is by using Laravel installer or by using Composer. So as we are going with the Composer, so also we have to verify that Composer must be installed into our local system. So how to verify? Simply type this keyword called Composer. So once we type, hit enter. Now we can see that this bulk list of commands simply verifies that Composer is available into my local system. Now let's get started to install a Level 12th version setup. So inside this folder, I'm going to create, let's say, Composer, a project of Level, and project folder name will be, let's say, la-crud app. Now simply this command simply means that by using Composer we are creating a project of this framework, that is Laravel, and this is our project folder name. So after typing this command, just hit enter, and now we can see that the installation process of this 12th version now started. So just wait for a while because as we can see, installation is in progress. Now successfully, as we can see that now installation has been completed. If I go back to folder structure, now inside this folder, here we have a subfolder and that is CRUD App. So what next? So simply I'll open this project folder into any of the editor. So right now in this course I will prefer VS Code. So simply let's go back to project terminal and here simply let's say cd CRUD app because this is the folder what we have created. Now I am inside this project folder and I want to open into VS Code. So simply I'll use a command called code dot. It means all the folders and all the files of this application I want to open into VS Code. Hit enter. And now we can see that successfully I have opened the complete setup into my VS Code editor. Now next after this, let's start development server to run this application into browser and see its newest landing page. So what I will do, let's go back to project terminal and here I'll try to execute this command called php artisan serve. This command will start in build development server. Hit enter. And now we can see that application has started on development server at 8000 port. I am pressing Ctrl into this link and now we can see it's not a landing page, but here we have some internal server error and that is of SQLite connection. So inside my local system, this extension is not enabled. So that's why I'm getting like SQLite connection error. So how to fix? It's very simple. Either I can go and install SQLite, the PHP extension into my local system, or it's better to use MySQL in place of SQLite. So here, let's go back to project editor. Then I will open .env and now we can see inside this .env it is using by default db connection equals to SQLite. So I prefer overall inside this complete course that will be MySQL. So to change this keyword from SQLite to MySQL, first thing first, let's go back to config folder database.php and inside this we can find all the available database drivers, that is by default it is using SQLite, but here inside these connections we can see the options of SQLite, MySQL, then here we have MariaDB, and also here we have the option of PostgreSQL and SQL Server. So here I'll prefer MySQL. Let's close this file, just open .env and simply change from SQLite to MySQL. And one more thing, let's create a database because as we know, like inside this first development course, we have to create a product management app. So behind the scene, this application also will be connected with the database. So here, let's go back to phpMyAdmin, then click on databases, and here I'll create a database, and that is something called Laravel underscore product underscore application. Let's copy this DB name, click on create button, database created. So let's go back to project editor. Then I'll go first uncomment all these lines. DB host, that is localhost, it is okay. Database name, this is my database name. Inside my local system, username is also okay like root. And currently, there's no password of it. And also, we can do one more thing here that as we know already, like Laravel already comes with some default migrations. So what we can do after database connectivity, also we can run the command called php artisan migrate. So once we run that command, so automatically all those migrations what we have inside this database migrations folder, these tables automatically gets migrated and created inside this connected database. So what we can do, let's go back to project terminal, and here I'll stop this development server first, and let's run the command called php artisan migrate. Hit enter, and now we can see database completed. So here, let's start development server again. So PHP artisan serve, hit enter, start it. So if I go back to browser, let's reload. And now we can see that successfully all the errors now resolved, because here now we are connected with the MySQL database. And if I go, let's reload. These are the dynamically created tables inside this database. And also here we have the newest landing page of level 12 version. Now successfully, after installation of this version number 12 application, now let's get started to install base authentication package into this setup, so that also will have the authentication system of login and registration. So what we can do for that authentication, simply let's go back to project terminal. I'll stop this development server. We have to run composer command because Breeze is a composer package. So by using composer, we can install Breeze authentication into this level application. So here the command will be composer require level forward slash, and here we have the Breeze keyword. After typing this command, hit enter, and now we can see the installation process started and successfully now installation has been completed. So if I go back to project editor, let's open our composer.json file, and now we can see inside this require object here we have level base of this 2.3 version. So after installation of this composer package, what we can do, let's go back to project terminal again, and here if I type the command called php artisan, if I hit enter, now inside this commands list, if I go up, so after installation of Breeze authentication package, here we'll have a section called Breeze and Breeze colon install. So to install Breeze controllers and resources, we have to run this command. So simply I will copy, or simply let's clear first PHP artisan, and it will be Breeze colon install. And one more thing, while running this command, please make sure that you don't have any extra code inside app.css, like inside resources, CSS, app.css, because it will go and override all these files. So the first file will be app.css and the second file will be from routes folder, that is web.php. So simply let's go back to project terminal, hit enter, and now we can see it is asking for some options. So first it is asking which bridge stack would you like to install. So I will go blade with alpine. So simply we have to type this blade keyword, hit enter. Now it is asking the second question here, that would you like dark mode support, by default value equals to no. So hit enter, it picked the default value. It is asking which testing framework do you prefer. So the default value will be paste. I will go with this PHP unit. So for this PHP unit, we have to type this one keyword. So type one, hit enter, and now successfully, after taking the values or the answers of all these questionnaire, now it started the process of installation and building node dependencies. So just wait for a while, and now successfully, as we can see that installation process now completed. So if I go back to folder structure, Now, as we can see that inside is web.php, which automatically gets updated while installation, and now we can see that it is containing lots of code after installation of base authentication and no dependencies. So this file was updated, and also inside this app.css. Remember previously we have some like more lines of code. Now this time already we have 3 lines of code. So after installation of base authentication, let's start development server again and see that how it behaves after installation. So if I go and run php artisan serve, hit enter, it started. So if I go back to browser, let's reload, and one more thing, inside this landing page, we don't have any option of login and register. But after installation of base authentication, and now we can see here we have two options, that is login and register. So first let's create some user. So whenever if I click on this register button, it will open a form. That form will contain some input fields like name, email, password, and confirm password. So whenever if I fill any informations, automatically those users will be registered inside this users table. So let's go and create some user. So user one email will be something, let's say user1 at example.net. Password will be from 1 to 8, and confirm password also will be from 1 to 8. Click on register, and successfully user registered and automatically gets login into this dashboard. So if I go to database, we can see 0 rows inside this users, but whenever if I reload, and now we can see inside this users, here we have single row entry. Now in this case we can see that automatically user registered, and after registration it logs in inside this dashboard. But I want one more step, that after registration also user must have to verify its email address. So for that what we can do, let's go back to editor, and here then I will go into this app folder, models folder. Let's open user.php, and now we can see inside user.php, here we have a line of code at line number 5, and it is commented, and here we have must verify email. So what we can do, let's go and uncomment this line of code. Let's copy this must verify email, and here we have to simply implement keyword, and then after must verify email. So automatically whenever now user registered, and also if I go inside this .env file, if I check here, so right now mail mailer equals to log. So automatically whenever the user will register, and here we have enabled the option of must verify email, and also inside this .env it is set to log. So whenever the user registers, storage, logs, all the log will be go inside this level.log file. Let's first remove all this content from this file. Let's go back to browser, and here first I will go click on logout. Let's create one more user, and I will call it as user2. Let's say user2 at the rate example.net. Password will be again from 1 to 8. 1 to 8. Click on register. So after implementing the concept of must verify email, now we can see that here we have an additional step to verify email. And here also we can see that inside .env file, right now we have mail mailer equals to log. So we are getting some kind of messages, some kind of verification link inside this log file. And this file we have opened from a storage from logs folder. So what we can do to verify the email, simply let's copy the link from here. Just go back to browser, open a new tab, paste and hit enter, and successfully as we can see that email verify, and the user2 now logs in into this dashboard. So here now we had seen that how to install base authentication package, how to do user registration, and also how to like enable the feature of must verify email. Now right now the concept is that here we have the enabled like mail mailer equals to log, but in a moment we'll see that how to verify the email value from the GMail SMTP. So now next, let's start the process to create Block management app. So here, first I want a database table called blocks. Inside that table, we'll have some columns, and inside that table, we'll store our blocks data. So to create a blocks table, we want a migration file. Also, we need a model file, and also we need a resource controller class. So step by step, I'll create all these files. So first, let's close all these, close all folders. And let's go back to project terminal. So first I'll create a migration. So PHP artisan, let's say make migration. We have to create a blocks table. So to create blocks table, hit enter. And now we can see our migration file has been created. If I go back to folder structure, database, migrations, and here we have create blocks table. So right now, whenever if I migrate this table, it will create ID, it means the default ID of that table, then created at and updated at. But here, apart from these columns, also I need like title, description, and a banner image. So for the time being, let's remove this timestamps method. It's a table, and here it will be type of text, and the column name will be called title, and the column length will be, let's say, 50 characters. Table text, then here we'll have called description. It is a type of text, so no need to pass like the length of this field, and also this column will take the null value as well. Then after, also we need the column, let's say, for the banner image, and the length of this field, let's say 150 characters, and it also accepts the null value. Now, after this title, description, banner image, also we need a column that is called user ID. Why we need user ID? Because as we know that we are creating an authenticated system, it means after login, user will be able to create some blog post. So in that case, also we have to store the user ID into this blocks table. But here, this is connected with the users table with the concept of foreign ID. So it will be table, then after foreign ID is a method, and here column will be user ID inside this blocks table, and constant constant, and it will be connected with the users table. Now let's add the timestamp. So table, and here we'll have timestamps method. So successfully, now this will be our table structure. It means whenever if I migrate, it will create the columns as ID, title, description, banner image, user ID, created at, and updated at. Now, after doing all these things inside this up method, let's go back to project terminal and simply run the command called php artisan migrate. Hit enter, and now we can see migration completed. If I go back to database, let's reload, and in this database we have one more table called blocks. Just click into it. Then I will go into structure, and now we can see ID, title, description, banner image, user ID, which is connected as a foreign key concept with users table. Then after here we have the timestamps column. Now let's create our model file. So PHP artisan make model, and the model will be called blog. Hit enter. Model file created. If I go inside this app folder, models folder, and here we have blog.php. Now inside this blog.php, protected, then after fillable property, and inside this fillable property, we have to write all those columns where we want data insertion. So inside blocks table, we want data insertion inside title column, inside description column, inside banner image, and also inside user ID. So successfully, I have listed all those columns of blocks table inside this fillable property. Now let's get started to create a resource controller, and along with resource controller, we'll get several types of methods, and according to those methods, then we have to create our layout files. So first I'll create a resource controller, go to project terminal, so PHP artisan, make controller, and the controller name will be something called block controller, and it is a type of resource controller. So simply we have to pass a resource flag. After passing, hit enter, and now we can see that controller class created. If I go back to folder structure, app, http, controllers, and here we have block controller.php. So as it was a resource controller, so we can see that inside this resource controller, we are getting lots of default methods like index method, create method, store method, show method, edit, update, and destroy. And all these methods have their own importance. So what next? Simply I'll create the layout first of this index, which is basically to list all the blocks of this block management app. Then after, we'll create a layout to create the block. So to that layout, we'll use the concept of this create method. So what we can do, I'll go to this resources folder, views folder, and here I'll create one more folder and I will call it as blog. And inside this blog folder, let's create some layout files index.blade.php to list all the blocks into this layout file. Right now it is empty, but in a moment we'll create some layout to list all the blocks. Then after, I'll create a file called create.blade.php. Inside that, we'll have a form, and from that form we'll save our blocks data into database table. Then after, I'll create a file that is called show.blade.php. This file is going to actually display the single block informations. Then after, I'll create a file that is called edit.plate.php. This file will be responsible to open any block into editable mode. Now, after creating all these layouts files, obviously we need some piece of HTML code to create the layout of this index plate, create plate, show plate, and edit plate. So to save our time, what we can do, simply I will go back to my GitHub repository, that is github.com/OWT hub. Then I'll click on this repositories, and here we have a repository with name called Level 12 Course Resources. Just simply click into this link. It will contain a folder, and that is CRUD-HTMLs. Let's go into this. And now we can see that this folder is containing some files, that is create.html, edit.html, list.html, and show.html. So first I will open this list.html. We can see it is containing lots of code. So let's click on this copy icon. Code gets copied. Go back to project editor. Let's open index plate file, and here I will paste all those code. Now here we can see it came with doc type, HTML head tag, and body, so we don't need all these things. It is using Tailwind CSS, and also as we know that by default inside Laravel application, if I go and confirm inside the CSS folder app.css, already it is using Tailwind CSS. So it's better to go with the default CSS concept of this Laravel application. So here it is containing all those code, but we don't want this doc type HTML head and body. So what we can do, just cut this div class container. Let's remove all this remaining code and paste the simplest div class container. So successfully, now inside this index plate, let's close all these div, do some formatting. Now inside this index plate, now here we have only the class container. Then after I will go and let's copy another piece of code, and that is of create.html. So from this, let's copy all the code from this create.html. Then I will go and open create.blade.php. Let's again paste all the code. I want only this div class container. Let's cut, remove all these remaining codes. Let's do some formatting. Save these changes. Now it is also completed. If I go, let's open a deep.html, copy all this HTML code, and here we have a d.blade.php. It is also containing doc type, head and body tag. I cut this div class container. Let's paste. Now here we have one more layout, that is a plate, and finally we want one more HTML code, that is of show.plate.php. let's copy all the code from this show.html. Then I'll go here and let's paste all the code into this file. And into same pattern, let's get this div class container, remove all these remaining code. And now successfully, here we have the HTML code inside this index plate, create plate, show plate, and edit.plate.php. And one more thing, if I go and open our dashboard after login, let's go and I think that email was verified and here we have the dashboard. So right now we can see that inside this dashboard, here we have only one navigation menu and that is our dashboard. So what I want to add one more menu here and that is called blog. So how to do, let's go to editor and after installation of base authentication, as we know that it has generated lots of files. So inside resources folder, inside views folder, inside this layouts folder, also we can see a file that is called navigation.blade.php. And inside this file, look at here, this is navigation links and it is containing a link of dashboard. So what we can do, let's copy the same piece of code and if I paste and let's call it as blog. Save these changes. If I go and reload, and okay, we have to start development server. Let's go back to project terminal, PHP artisan serve, hit enter, start it. If I go and reload, and now we can see the blog menu along with dashboard. But if I click on this blog menu, as we can see, it is directing to this dashboard and it is because we have updated only the label, but the redirection is of the dashboard route. So how to create so that whenever if I click on blog menu, it will go to the index layout or the index method of blog controller class. So first thing first, let's go inside blog controller and here inside this index method, I will call our layout file that is index.blade.php. So here it will be returned view helper function. First I will go into blog folder, it means resources folder, views folder, blog folder, and then after from that folder I will open index.blade.php. Now let's create our resource routes. Just to create, I'll simply open web.php from routes folder and then after let's say resource routes. So route scope resolution operator resource method and here I will call blog and after that we have to pass the controller class so it will be blog controller. Now save all these changes. So once we type this line of code inside this web.php, now let's see a magical concept of Laravel. So for that, go back to project terminal and here if I type a command called php artisan route colon list, if I hit enter and now we can see that it has listed all the application routes of current setup. Now at the top of this section, now we can see that all these routes belongs to this block controller class. So block controller is a resource controller and inside this web.php, here we have a single line of code and behind the scene, this single line of code has generated lots of resource routes. And the magical thing is that if I go back to terminal, we can see this is of index method of block controller class, store method of block controller class. It means all the methods now attached with each individual route of this routes section. So here I want that whenever if any user click on block menu, it will go to the index layout, it will go to the index method of block controller. So for index method, index route, here we have the name of that route that is block.index. So what to do? Let's go back to project editor. Then I will go into this navigation.blade.php into this route. Simply I will type block.index. Let's copy and put here. Now save all these changes. So once we save, let's start development server. So we can also start development server from this VS Code like internal terminal system. Go to view, open terminal and here if I type php artisan serve, hit enter, start it, let's go and reload. And now we can see that inside this blog, if I click now this time, we are not redirected into dashboard. Instead, we are getting a separate page that is blog. And this is from index.get.php. Right now, design is totally distorted, but this is not an issue. The idea is that now we have changed our redirection of block menu from dashboard to the index method of block controller class. Now let's set all these layout so that these all layouts what we have created will be auto-integrated inside this authentication system. So what we can do, go back to project editor. So here I will open the project folder, and inside this resources folder, inside views folder, inside layouts folder, and now you can see a file called app.wave.php. And one more thing, if I go to browser, let's go first at dashboard, click on profile here. So this is the profile page which is coming somewhere from project folder. So first we have to find that from where this file is coming. So we can see that this file is coming from profile folder, and the file will be something here at d.php. So we can see that inside this profile page it is using a component that is x-app-layout, and this is nothing, this is app.blade.php which exists inside this layouts folder. So what basically I need that my own layouts what we have created like index layout, create layout, edit layout, all these layouts will be auto integrated inside this authentication system. So instead of creating a different layout, I'll use the default authentication system layout, that is app.play.php. So for that what we can do, let's copy this component. I'll close first all these files. Let's open resources folder, views folder, blog folder. So I want to use first our app.blade.php of this layouts folder to our layouts inside first inside this index.blade. So it's simple. Just go here and use this component, that is x-app layout, and just close this component, and in between all these contents will be now integrated inside app.play.php. So for the time being, if I save these changes, let's go and reload or click on this blog menu, and now we can see that here we are getting our navigation, that is dashboard, blog, and the profile option. And here also the layout, that is index.blade.php, now integrated inside this default layout, the default skeleton of base authentication. Now the same concept we have to repeat for all those layout. Let's go inside this create.blade.php, close here, save these changes. Let's open at d.blade.php, close here, and finally here for the single blog page. Now, once we save all these changes, and one more thing, let's go back to our GitHub repository. And inside this repository, also we can see a file called app.css. So here, let's copy the complete code because it will set or adjust the layout. As we can see right now, this is also distorted. So to fix that, here we have the CSS I have copied. Then I will go inside resources folder, CSS folder. Let's open app.css. So I will remove the existing 3 lines of code, paste this updated code, and also after pasting the code inside app.css, I will generate a build file, and that build file automatically gets stored inside public folder and build folder. And remember, previously we had installed base authentication, so it also installed the node dependencies and created the build of that application. So already we have a build folder inside public folder, and here we have inside assets, here we have the build files of CSS and JS. Now to create the latest build of this latest code of app.css, what I will do, I will run a command called npm run build, hit enter, and now we can see it has created a new build of the CSS and JS file. So once we do, let's go to browser, and if I reload, and now we can see the updated layout of index.create.php. But remember, please try to paste this all code of app.css into that file, and then you have to create the build of that. Now one more thing, if I go here, you can see a button that is called create new block. Right now, there is no redirection, but I want that whenever if I click on this button, it will open the create.blade.layout what we have created to our blog post. So for that, if I go, let's type that command again called php artisan route colon list, and from this list of command here we have the route called blog/create, but this route will be called whenever if we call this named route that is called blog.create. So what I will do, just go back to editor and here let's open index.blade.php. First I will close all these files, then I will open views folder, blog folder, index.blade.php, and from here this is create new blog, double curly pairs, and here route helper function, and inside this it will be something called blog.create. Let's re-verify, and here it will be blog.create. So if I save these changes, let's go and reload, and if I click on this button, and now we can see blog/create, but there is no content, and it is because I think like inside blog controller class, inside create method, we don't actually call our layout. So return view, so blog folder, and we have to call create.plate.php. Save these changes. So if I go, let's reload. Now successfully, here we have one more layout implemented, and that is of create.plate.php. Now next after it, if I click on this button, there is no redirection, but I want that whenever if anyone click on this button, it will go to the list of that blog page. So it's very simple again. Let's go and find. First I will open create.blade.php, and into here back to blogs inside this href attribute, double curly pairs, route helper function, and for index route, we have to call blog.index. If I go here, look at here, we have to go inside this blog, and this will be open whenever I will type blog.index. So here, inside a single quote, let's say blog.index. Save these changes. So if I go, let's reload, click on this button. Now we are on the list layout, create in this button, and now we are on the create new blog layout. So successfully, this is the implementation of list layout and create layout. Now next after it, we have to work on the functionality. It means that whenever if I pass any data, click on this button, how to save all these data to our blocks table. So in this blocks table, we want data to create any block like title, description, banner image, and the user ID. But before that, also we have to implement one more condition, and that is without having any user login, all these routes of this CRUD application will not be accessible. For example, if I want to open this index layout, if I want to open this create layout, first the user must be logged in. Right now, if I copy this URL, this is open. If I go click on logout, user has been logged out, and if I try to open, so instead of login page, right now I am getting an error page. So how to fix? Let's go back to editor. Then I will open web.php, and after installation of base authentication, we got two middlewares, that is auth and verified. So what we can do, first I will copy. Let's go here inside this resource route. So route, scope resolution operator, middleware, port base, auth and verified. Auth means that whenever the user will fill the information like the email and the password will be valid, and also email must be verified. Now after this, simply group here, and inside this group let's create a callback function, and simply I'll cut this line of code. Just go inside this group section and paste that piece of code. Save these changes. So if I go, now let's reload. And now we can see that this time instead of getting internal server error, now this time automatically we are redirected into a login page. So let's log in with user 2. Password is from 1 to 8. Click on login. We are now logged in, and successfully we are on the create blog layout. If I go to the index layout, let's copy this URL, click on logout. But if I try to open, And now we can see instead of getting that layout or any type of error, now this time here we have the login page. Now let's first start to work over the create blog layout. So I will open, or first we have to log in. Click on login button, click on this button. So first I will start with the concept of this create new blog layout. Let's go back to project editor and I will open create.blade.php. So we can see that here we have the form. This form is containing three attributes like action, which is an empty link, method equals to post, and ink type equals to multipart form data. And it is an important attribute of this form tag because inside this form also we are uploading a banner image. So here inside this action, instead of this empty link, let's put double curly pairs. So whenever if we submit this form will be submitted to the store method of this block controller class. So the name of this route will be block.store. Let's go back to editor and inside this route helper function, it will be block.store, and also we need a CSRF token. So to generate a CSRF token value we have to use CSRF directive, so at the rate CSRF. Now save these changes. So here if I check all about these fields, so here we have the input map text which is for the blog title. Here we have the default value, so let's remove this default value. And also please make sure that these inputs will contain a name attribute. So here we have the title, then here we have the description. I'll remove the dummy content from this text area, and here we have the banner image. So if I confirm the name attribute, it is okay, and also here it is okay. So if I save these changes, let's go reload this layout, and if I inspect, and then now we can see inside this form tag, here we are getting blog, and this blog actually we are submitting using post request type. So whenever if I try to hit this blog route using post request type, it will call the store method of this blog controller class. And also inside this HTML, here we have the CSRF token value. Now let's go to our blog controller class and the store method. So first we have to validate our form data. So for that I will implement the concept of this request object. So here request, then I will call validate method, and inside this validate let's pass an array of data and the key value like the name attribute of each field. Remember we have title, then we have description, then we have banner underscore image. If I want that this title is only required, so in that case we have to remove these two fields. But at this case, let's assume that I want all these three fields. So for that we have to put all these keys inside this validate array. Now here, so this is the name attribute of that input field, and I want to implement certain piece of rules for that field. So it is first required, and also it will contain a string value. Now here for description, it is required and string value. For the banner image, it is also required, and also the image what we will upload or any file what we will upload is of image type. So successfully, these are the basic validation rules what we have implemented for our form input fields. Then after, so it's very simple. Now if any error, it will get automatically, it will redirect to the same layout. So if I save these changes, let's reload, close here. So for example, if I will not pass any value, click on this button, and now we can see we are getting the same layout, but this time error is not coming for these fields. So how to display the error, that is title is required, description is required, and banner image is also required. So for that, let's go again to this create.blade.php. So I want to render the error for this title field. So here we will have an error directive. So error, and if any error is available for this title field, so in that case, and error in that case, simply let's display into a div tag plus equals to something. It's error, and I want to display the error message. It will be message variable. Then I will go to this block controller class and inside this store method, if suppose we have submitted all the form data. So for the time being, if I want to print all those values first, let's use query tag to format the form data, print R. So by using this request object, we can call all method to display all submitted form data. Save these changes. So if I go, let's pass some dummy values, choose a banner image. After passing all these data, click on this button and now we can see that form has been submitted. Here we have the CSIF token value, title, description and the banner attributes. After getting form data, then we have to use the concept of blog model. So after using blog model, then we can use the concept of create method to insert all these data into our blogs table. Let's go back to project editor, go inside this block controller class. So let's assume we have all data. So in that case, I will create an array. So here, title, we want title for database. Then we want the description. Then we want a banner image. And also we want the user ID. So user ID we can get after user authentication. It means after login. So in that case, I can get from this request helper function. Then after I will call user method and here it will return ID property. And then after also we have to load the blog model. So use blog model from app models blog. So after putting all these data, simply we have to call blog model and create method. And inside this create method, simply we have to pass this data array. And inside this data, we'll have the title, description, banner image, and the user ID. But one more thing, as we can see that right now, what the keys we are getting here, that is title, it is matching like this key is matching with the title here. And if we compare with this description, if I copy search, it is also available here inside this table. If I compare this banner image, it is also available. So now as we can see that what the columns we have taken inside this blocks table, that is title, description and banner image, it is matching with the form input fields what we have submitted. So what we can do, let's go back to code editor. So instead of writing something like this, data title, data description, data banner image, what we can do, just go and remove. And here, before this request validate, just create a data variable. So it means if there will be no error while submitting our form, so automatically those data, like what we are seeing here, all these data will be assigned to this data variable. And now it becomes from a simplest variable to an array variable. And this array we are inserting by using this create method to our blocks table. But one more thing, also we have to do like whenever if I will upload any image like banner image, so before going to DB, also we have to upload that image inside our project folder. So the concept will be whenever if I will upload any banner image, that image first will be uploaded inside this storage folder, app folder, inside this public folder. Either we can create a new folder or inside same folder. So what we can do for this, simply let's say if I'll first check that if we have uploaded any file, obviously we have implemented the validation, but let's check one more time. So if request has file, and in that case, the name attribute is something banner image. So in that case, what we can do, data banner image equals to first we have to upload our file into a storage folder, app folder, and the public disk. So in that case, request, then let's call the file method, and inside this file method we have to pass the name attribute, that is banner image. Then I will call the storage method, not storage, it will be store method, and inside this store I want to create a folder blocks inside public disk. So what will happen by the help of this line? So whenever if we upload the banner image, so in that case, this request first will search that if this is available. So in that case, automatically it will create a blocks folder into this storage public disk, and it will upload this file into the blocks folder of the public folder. And then after, also it reassigned like the file what we have stored here, the file name will be assigned to this data planner image, and automatically now here we have the data. It will contain the title, description, here we have the user ID, and here it will get the banner image. So it will create and save the data into blocks table. After that, let's say return to route helper function. So I want to return, and it will be block.index, and also I want to return with a message. So let's pass the message key as success, and the message will be something blog created successfully. Save these changes. And here we have some error, and that is spelling mistake of return. Save these changes. Now I want to display this message after saving this blog. So also we have to go into a parent layout, that is app.play.php, inside this layouts folder. And inside here, just go inside this main tag. So I will use the concept of session directive. So first we can check that if any message exists inside this success key. If it exists, simply we have to display here. So in session, I'll go and use div tag. Let's use a class. So I hope inside our app.css, all the code we have copied from GitHub repository. So inside here, I can see like here we have a class that is success-message. Let's copy and put here. And inside here, let's use curly pairs and simply copy this success and message. Save these changes. So if I go, let's reload. So internal server error, that is unexpected end of file, and it is coming from our app.blade.php. Okay, in session, spelling mistake. Save these changes. Let's reload. Now it's fine. Click on this button, create new blog. I have used Chrome extension to pass dummy data like fake filler. If I click, we are getting some dummy data. Click on this banner image, choose this image. We have all these data. Then I'm clicking on this button, create blog. And now we can see blog created successfully. Now, if I go to folder structure and if I check all about our public folder, not public, storage folder, app folder, public folder, and now we can see our blocks folder, and here we have our image stored. And also if I go back to db table, let's reload, and now you can see that here we have the id, title, description, and the banner image. Now this image we have stored into blocks table, and this is the random generated id of that image. Now next I will create some more posts for this blocks table. Just go here, click on create new blog. I'll use fake filler, the Chrome extension, to fill all these fields. Let's select an image. This time this one. Click on create blog. Blog created successfully. And if I reload, and here we have the blog data. Now next after it, we have to work over the list layout. And right now, this index.blade.php is containing only the static value. So what we have to do, simply we have to get all these data from this blocks table, and automatically by using for each directive, we have to list all these blocks data to this tabular format. Let's go back to editor, and first I will go to this block controller so that we can pass the blocks data to a view file. Let's go inside this index method, and here it's a block scope resolution operator where actually we have to list all the blocks data into tabular format according to user ID. If user 2 created the data, then it will be available for user 2 ID. Now here where, and I will use the condition that is user ID equals to request helper function, then user method, and then ID property. Then after, then here let's say order by. Also, like the ID will be descending order. It means like what the post we have created at last, that post will be the first position inside tabular format. And also I want to implement the pagination concept. So it will be paginate and I want that per page will have the 10 number of records. Now after getting, let's store into a blocks variable, and this blocks variable I will return to our index.play.php layout. So here it will be blocks and it will be blocks variable. Let's go inside index.blade.php, and here inside this table of format right now we can see that it is containing the static data. Now next, to convert this static HTML to the dynamic values according to the block data, what we can do, let's first close this tr tag. Then after, I'll use the concept of for each directive, and here end for each, and in between these two let's cut this tr, and I will go into this for each directive and just paste here. Now then after, inside this for each directive I will pass the blocks variable, and this variable we are passing from the controller class and single block. So for this static id, let's use double curly pairs, and it will be blog arrow id. Then after, for this blog title, let's go cut this title, and it will be blog arrow title. For description, blog arrow and description. Then after, here we'll have a value like created at. So what we can do, just go get rid of this static value, curly pairs, blog arrow created at, and I want to format this value into, it's a DM and capital Y. Save these changes. So for the time being, if I go and reload, and now we can see that this time we are getting all this data like the dynamic data from blocks table what basically we have created. Now next after it, we have to work over these action buttons. But before going further, if I click and create a new blog, so this time instead of this simple text, if I put much more text into this description, let's choose a banner image, click on this button, and now you can see that this time we are getting much more text inside this description. So this time design is not good according to this description. So what we can do, we can put a condition of limit according to the text value of this description. Let's go back to editor. So here, before printing, before outputting this description, what we can do, I can use str then limit method, and here inside this description I want to put or display only first 50 characters. Save these changes. If I go and let's reload, and now we can see that it is giving only the 50 characters from that description. Now next after it, we have to work over these action buttons. Let's go back to editor. If I scroll, so here we have the view button, edit button and delete button. And also if suppose we have much more like post inside our table, so at that case also we want pagination. Right now what the pagination we are seeing, this is actually dealing with the static values here. We can see the static buttons. So what we can do, just go and get rid of these buttons, double curly pairs, I'll use blocks variable, and simply I'll call the links method. Save these changes. Let's reload, and now you can see that right now we have only three rows like three data, so that's why we don't have any pagination. But if I go, let's change the pagination setting, like from 10 we want only 2 here, it means per page 2. If I save, let's go and reload. And now we can see that here we have the pagination link, here we have the page number 1 and page number 2. So it is also working. Let's go to our index.blade.php. Now we have to work over the action buttons, that is view, edit and delete. So inside this view we can see here we have an empty link. Let's use double curly pairs route helper function. So to open our single blog page, if I go back to terminal, so here we have the route, and that is block.show. It will call the show method of block controller class, and in that case we have to use the route as blog forward slash and the blog id. So this is the name attribute block.show. Let's go here inside this first value of this helper function. blog.show, and inside second value we have to pass the blog ID. So either we can pass the blog ID or the complete single blog object. So what I will do, I will copy and pass it here. Save these changes. So once we save, let's go and reload. And if I click on this button, and now we can see we are redirected onto blog/blog ID. So right now it is empty because inside blog controller class, the method is not currently handled. So what we can do in this case, let's return view. So first we have to go inside our blog folder and then we have to call the show.play.php. So if I save these changes, so if I go, let's reload. And now we can see that here we have the single blog page. This is show.play.php. So here we have button, here we have the banner image, title, description, and created ad. Now next, to convert these static values into dynamic values according to the blog ID, what we can do, just go back to editor and here, instead of passing like string ID, I will do blog model and blog object. So automatically, whenever if I pass this blog ID, so according to blog ID, it will fetch the complete blog information. Let's copy this blog object. Then I will go here, pass an array, and inside this, let's say blog and complete blog object. Then I will go and open our show.blade.php from resources folder, views folder, blog folder, and this is the file. Now inside this file, let's open first. I want to fix first this redirection that is back to blogs. So instead of empty links, let's call route helper function and this will be blog.index. Save these changes and then after here we have an image tag. So I will remove this blog image that is the static value and here double curly pairs. It will be blog arrow and it will be banner underscore image. Then after I will go for this title. So instead of passing this static title, double curly pairs. Then after blog variable, it will be title. Let's copy this syntax. Go for description. So if I go, let's remove this one. So this will be blog description for created ad. Let's go and remove this static value and here this will be created underscore ad and I will format to date, month and year. Save these changes. So once we save, let's go and reload. And okay, here we have some error and this is inside blog.index and okay, the single quotes is missing and here it will be save these changes and now you can see here we are getting the title is okay, description is also okay, created at is also okay, but here we are not able to read the banner image. So what is the issue? An issue is that if I go and inspect, we can see that this image from where it is coming. So first we have to wrap this banner image into asset helper function. So let's use asset, put here, save these changes. So if I reload, and now we can see it's still banner image is missing, but this time banner image is loading from blocks folder and this is the image ID. But the question is that like successfully we have uploaded banner images into folder structure and into database. So why it is not coming? So the concept is that remember while uploading our banner images, we have saved all the images into storage folder, into app, public folder, blocks, and here we have the image IDs. But this time we are using the concept of asset helper function. So this helper function will be able to read all those files which is placed inside this public folder. So this time all these images available here. So how to read those images from this public folder? So it means either we can go with the manual process to copy all these files from here to here, or the best option to create a storage link from here to here. So to create a storage link, it's very simple inside Laravel because by using PHP artisan command, we can simply execute a command which automatically creates a link of this storage folder from here to this public folder. Let's go back to project terminal, and if I go and type PHP artisan storage colon link, hit enter, and now we can see link successfully created. If I go back to folder structure, now inside this public folder which is at root, now here we have the storage blocks, and here we have all the image IDs, and also look at here we have an icon. So this is the link icon what basically we have created using PHP artisan from this storage area to this public area. Now if I go, let's reload. Again, it is missing because this time the image is coming from blocks folder, but this is a subfolder of storage folder. So after asset, also we have to include storage, and then after forward slash and just concatenate. Save these changes. So if I go, let's reload, and now we can see that here we have the banner image, title, description, and created ad. So successfully, now we have completed one more layout, and that is single block page layout. Now next after this, let's get started to concept over the implementation of this edit block. It means whenever if I click on this button, it will open edit.build.php, which will be in edit mode to update any existing informations. Let's go back to editor. So first I will go to the single layout, and one more thing, if I go click on this button, we can see that this list layout button is also working into this single page layout. Go here, and if I click, for example, this second one, click on this view button, it is working. Click on this first ID, it is also working. Now next we have to work over this edit button. So whenever if I click on this edit button, simply we have to redirect into the route. So if I type PHP artisan route colon list, so we have to redirect into blog.edit. Blog.edit, this is the name route. It will call the edit method of blog controller, and inside URL we have to pass blog, then blog ID, and edit as a keyword. So what we can do, we don't worry about this URL structure. Only we have to keep in our mind is all about this name attribute, that is blog.edit. Let's go back to editor, and inside this index.blade.layout, not actually inside this show.blade.layout, here we have the edit button. Let's go inside href attribute, double curly pairs. It will be route helper function, blog.edit, and also inside this second value, we have to pass the blog ID. So instead of passing a single value like blog ID, I will pass the entire object. So once we pass, let's go. If I reload, if I click on this button, and now we can see successfully we are redirected blog forward slash blog ID and edit keyword. Now it is empty, and it's because if I go into blog controller class, so inside this right now we are not handling this ID. We have to change blog model and blog object. And here let's call return view. We have to go into blog folder, and then we have to open our edit.play.php, and additionally also we have to pass the data according to this blog object. So let's copy, go here, let's say blog and blog object. Now if I save these changes, so if I go, let's reload, and now we can see that this is a update blog layout page, but right now this page is with static values. Let's go back to editor. So the same pattern of code, what basically we did for this show.blade.php, the same pattern of code we have to repeat inside edit.blade.php. So simple, if I go into blog folder, let's open edit.blade.php. So first here we have some redirection, that is of blog list. So what we can do, curly pairs, and it will be route helper function, single quote, it will be blog.index. Save these changes. Now here we have the form tag. So let's go first with these values. Now here, what we can do for this input field, let's add a value attribute, and also we can see here we have already value. Let's remove curly pairs. it will be blog arrow and title. Then after here we have description. Let's remove this static description, double curly pairs. It will be blog and then after description. Then after he will have current banner image. So right now this is static value. Let's remove, let's use asset helper function. Then we have to go into storage folder and then after forward slash concatenate blog arrow and banner underscore image. Then after he will have also the banner image upload. So I think all done. Save these changes. So if I go, let's reload. So here we have the blog title, blog description, and this is blog banner image. And also, if I click on this button successfully, we are on the landing page. It means lit layout. So if I click on this view button, it is working. Click on this edit button, and also it is working. Now, next we have to work. So, for example, if I update any information inside this layout, how to save the updated informations into a database table. Now for this interesting concept, it means whenever if this form will be submitted, if I go back to project terminal, this route will be hit called block.update. So it will call update method of block controller class. So what we can do, just go here inside this edit.play.php, inside this form tag, inside this action attribute, it's a route helper function, and we have to call blog.update, and inside the second value we have to pass blog ID. So blog ID, I am simply passing the complete blog object. Save these changes. Now let's go inside block controller class, and here we have the update method. So instead of ID, what we can do, let's say blog and blog object, and here first I will implement the concept that is request. Like the request object will put the validate method, pass an array, title will be the name field, then description, then we have banner underscore image. Let's confirm the name attributes one more time. So here we have the title, then here for the description, and then here for banner image. So all okay, title, description, banner image. So the basic rules we want like required, a string, then here required a string, and for banner image required, and what the file we upload, that will be our image. Now next after it, so whenever this is only for the validation and also in case of any error, let's go to edit.play.php, and I will use the concept of error directive first. So error directive, and in this case title, if we have any error, let's say first int error, and then after I will use div tag with message or class error, and here it will be message. Let's copy error directive, then after go for this description field, put here, let's copy this description, then I will copy error directive, go inside for this input by file button. And one more thing, I don't think so that this error directive will be required for this banner image. Let's remove it's because like if suppose I want to update title and description, I don't want to update the banner image. I want old image. So in that case, this field should be optional. Save these changes. Let's go inside block controller and let's remove this banner image. So here we have to collect the form data, then we have to update the existing informations inside our database. But one more thing, if suppose if we have uploaded the updated banner image, we have to check if banner image exists, then we have to delete first from disk, from database our old banner image, then we have to re-upload our new banner image. So here, let's say if request object has file, first, we have to check that if we have uploaded any new banner image. So in that case, what we'll do if blog, it means single blog, it is containing some banner image. So in that case, first we have to delete from a storage folder from public disk. So to delete, let's say storage, then I will call disk method. We have to go into public disk and then after simply call delete method, and into this delete method simply we have to pass blog and banner image. That's it, all done. And now next, let's say data banner image. We have to re-upload the new image as well. So in that case, let's say banner image equals to request file, and here we have the file that is banner image. We have to store into blogs folder, and this folder is inside public disk. Now save these changes. Now after this, let's go here. So blog object, simply we have to update with this updated informations. All done. Let's return to route. Now I want to redirect user to the single blog page. So blog.show. Also we have to pass the blog ID. So let's pass the complete object with a message, and the key will be success, and it will be, let's say, blog updated successfully. And one more thing, this data is okay here, but also here request validate, let's say data. Save these changes. So if I go back to browser, let's reload. For example, I want to update this title. Let's say updated blog title. I want to go with the old image. Click on update blog button. And here we have some error, that is post method is not supported. And okay, I got this error, and it is because that this method what we are hitting is using put or patch request type. So in that case, we have to use the concept of method spoofing. Method spoofing is a concept where at runtime we can change the request type. So right now it is of post request type. So at runtime, whenever if we change that request from post to put or patch, like put or patch or delete. So a dynamic conversion, this is known as method spoofing. So let's go back again to this edit layout, and inside this our form tag, I'll use okay, actually we have to use two directive first, that is CSR directive, and second the method directive. And inside this method, I want to tell this form that at runtime, you have to convert post request type to put request type, or let's call patch request type. Save these changes. So if I go, let's reload. And here inside this title, let's click first on this edit blog button. Let's say updated blog title. Click on this update blog button. And now you can see blog updated, and successfully here we have the old image, the title, description, and the created ad. Let's go edit blog, back to blogs. And for example, I want to update the description of this third number ID. Click on edit button. Okay, it is not working. Let's go first inside index.blade.php, and inside this edit button, it will be route helper function, single quotes, it will be blog.edit. We have to pass the blog ID. So I will pass the complete blog object, save these changes. So if I go, let's reload, click on this edit button now, and now we can see it is working. Let's update this title. So sorry, description of this post now updated. Now let's update this banner image as well. So I want to upload, for example, this image. Click on update blog button, and now we can see our image has been updated as well as description also updated. So finally, here we have completed the functions like for the list layout, view layout, and also for the edit layout. And the last thing we have to work inside this CRUD application, and that is of delete button functionality. Now next, to implement the concept of delete button functionality, if I go back to index.blade.php, here we have the delete button. So inside this delete button, already we have added on click event. So if I go click on this delete button, for example, this third number ID, we can see that it is asking for confirmation. If suppose in your HTML, if it is missing, so in that case, what basically you have to do, let's remove first this on click. I want that whenever if any user clicks on delete button, first I want to take the confirmation. So here simply on click and inside here, let's say return JavaScript confirm alert. And here, let's say are you sure want to delete question mark if user presses OK button, so it will return the true value. If user presses like no button or cancel button, it will return the false value. So if we get the true value, it means after confirmation, after getting the OK button, we have to call a form, and that form also using the concept of method spoofing at runtime, we convert post request type to delete request. Now next, to implement this delete button functionality, what basically we can do here, let's cut this first, this button, and I'll wrap inside this form tag, and inside this form tag, just paste by default inside this form, let's put the method equals to post request type. But inside this action, here comes the twist. If I go back to terminal inside our route list, so it will call destroy method of block controller, and look at here the name, that is block.destroy. And additionally, also we have to pass the block ID. So what we can do inside this action, double curly pairs, then after route helper function, single quote, and inside this, let's say block.destroy inside second, let's pass the complete single block object. Save these changes, but this route is not going to call because if we check here, so this is called using delete request type. So here, what we can do, already we know about the concept of method spoofing. So first, this is a form, so we have to include CSRF directive. Then after at runtime, we want to change the method from post request type to delete request type. So whenever a form will be submitted, in that case, what will happen? It will call the destroy method of this block controller class, and instead of this ID, it will be block and block object. So first, if the method will be hit, so in that case, first we have to delete the banner image from storage, and then after we are able to delete the blog information from DB table. So what we can do, let's say if blog banner image, if banner exists, then after let's say storage, let's call disk method from public. I want to delete this banner underscore image. Now save these changes. Now next after, actually this code is going to delete only the banner image, but also we have to delete the blog information from table. So simply blog and delete method. Then after, let's return to route. I want to redirect into the index page. So block.index with a message. It will be with success key, and the message will be, let's say, blog deleted successfully. If I save these changes, let's go back to browser, let's reload. If I click, for example, the second row, click on delete button, cancel, nothing will happen. But whenever, if I click on OK, the form will be submitted, image has been deleted, like the banner image also deleted, and also we can see the row has been deleted from this tabular format. So if I go, let's go, and if I reload, let's copy this image ID to confirm that is it deleting the banner image from folder. So I have copied. If I go to the folder structure, let's open public folder storage blocks, and if I search here, that is with the name. So this is the name of the banner image, like here what we had searched. Now let's go and delete, that is blog number 3. So if I go, let's reload blog number 3, click on delete button, OK, blog deleted. If I go to table, we can see blog deleted. And if I go back to folder structure, let's reload, go to public folder. And okay, I can see that it is not able to delete this storage banner image of that banner. And why basically this has happened? Inside this destroy method, okay, inside its delete method, instead of passing this text, it will be blog, arrow, and banner image. Save these changes. Let's go back to browser. Let's create a new blog. And here I will upload, for example, this image. Click on create blog button. Successfully, blog has been created with ID equals to 4. Click on view button. This is the blog information. Click on edit blog. It is working. If I go, let's say updated, click on update blog button. It is working. As we can see, back to blogs. Let's click on this delete button, and one more thing, let's confirm the ID. It will be, so if I copy this ID, let's go back to VS Code, and if I search, if I go inside public folder, like IP is the last character, and here we have the ip.jpg. Now let's go and delete. Click on delete button. OK. It deleted, and if I go, and now we can see that now image has also been deleted from this storage folder. So successfully, now we have implemented almost every concept of this CRUD application, like we had seen the create operation, list operation, update operation, and delete operation. Now finally, here we have a single concept left, and that is how to send an email on user registration using Gmail SMTP. Because already we had seen that right now mail logger equals to log, where on registration it will send that link into the laravel.log file. But I want that whenever the user will register, the confirmation email will go into the email address by using Gmail SMTP. Now next, to start with the email functions. So what the data we need to set the Gmail SMTP will be, if I go here, so we need basically the host name, then we want a port number, then username and password. So in case of username, what is the email value? What is the email address of Gmail account will be the username. So here, now I'm logged in into my Gmail account. So if I go here, now you can see here we have the Gmail address like the email value. So let's copy. This is nothing. This is the username. Now to get the password, let's go into account. Then I will click here, manage your Google account. Then I will click into the security menu, and what the sections right now we are saying this is only to generate app password. And one more thing, before generating app password, remember two-step verification must be enabled. So here in my case for this account it is already enabled. So let's click into it, and successfully at the bottom now we are able to see app password. So for example, in your case if it is not coming, so what you can do, if I'll copy this URL, so here the URL will be myaccount.google.com, and simply you have to type call app password. Now it will go to that screen. So let's open it. And here we have the section of app password. So already I have created a sample one. Now let's create one more, and that is CRUD SMTP. Click on this create button. This is only the app name, and now you can see that it has generated an app password. So I will copy. I have copied. Click on done button. Then I will go here, and in case of password, this is the app password. Now in case of host name, it will be smtp.gmail.com, and for the port number it will be 487. Now what we can do, touch this like the Gmail SMTP data with this Laravel application. Let's go inside this .env file, and if I scroll, so here inside this mail mailer equals to log, this time we are using SMTP. In case of host, it will be smtp.gmail.com. For the port number, it will be 487. For username, this is my email value. And for the password, let's remove first all these spaces. I'll just copy and put here in this mail password. And from this from address, so I will copy the username and just put it here. And from this from name, let's say that online web tutor YT. Save all these changes. So successfully, now we have configured the Gmail SMTP with this Laravel application. So whenever I try to register any new user, so automatically by using this Gmail SMTP, it will send an email to the Gmail account. Let's try some experiment. So here, if I go click on logout, click on register, and here I'll use another Gmail account. If I will copy, let's go to application, email, this one, and password I am using from 1 to 8 for this CRUD setup. Click on register, and I can see that it is taking so much time to send an email, and here we have maximum execution time. So I think there is some mistake inside of SMTP detail. Let's check one more time, and I think that the port number is incorrect because it will be 465. Save these changes, and behind the scene actually user registered already, I think, and here it will be. So let's go and copy this email, delete this one. I'll go here, let's reload. Now if I click on register button, and successfully, as you can see that now it has sent some email to our Gmail account. So to confirm, if I go to Gmail account, and now we can see that here we got an email, click into it. So we can see icon is missing, but here now we got an email, and this is for email verification. So what we can do, if I go and copy this, copy link address, if I go into this Chrome tab, let's open, and successfully, as we can see that now email has been verified. So this is how to send an email using email SMTP. And one more thing, as we can see that inside this email template, now the logo is missing. So if someone asks that how to fix this issue as well, so how to fix, it's very simple again. What we can do, so let's say that I want to use this logo in place of the missing logo. So actually to customize this email template, we have to publish a vendor Laravel mail folder to the resources folder and views folder, because this is a by default email template which Laravel has used. So what to do? Let's go back to project terminal, stop this development server. So PHP artisan vendor publish. I will use a tag flag, and here I want to publish the Laravel mail template. Hit enter, and now we can see that successfully it has copied a directory from this location to this location. So I can find the template or the template parts inside these resources, views, mentor, vendor, and mail folder. So let's go inside the application setup. Then I will go into resources, views, and here vendor folder, mail. And inside this mail folder, if I go into HTML, and inside this HTML, here we have a file that is called header.play.php. So right now, as we can see, this is the URL and this icon is right now missing. So what we can do, I'll simply go copy this URL, and after copy, if I simply replace this URL with this one successfully, if I save these changes, let's go back to application, and here if I go, let's copy this email value, click on delete button, and let's start development server, PHP artisan serve, And if I go, let's reload, click on register, and here I will fill the same informations, click on register, successfully email sent to user. So if I go back to account, and here I can see new message from online web tutor YT at the footer. If I click on this show link, and now you can see here we have the icon, and successfully as you can see that how to customize email logo of email template. So now here we have the link to verify our account. So successfully, now this is overall the CRUD application what basically we have configured and created at the first course of this Laravel 12th version. Now let's get started the concept that how to create APIs using version number 12. I will start with a very basic concept without using any authentication. Alright friends, inside this video topic, I will discuss that how to create APIs inside version number 12 without using any authentication. If we're talking about authentication, so we have multiple sources like either we can use Sanctum, either we can use Passport or JWT. But in this course, I want that you should know like how to create the basic APIs where we don't use any authentication. So what is the idea? Idea is very simple. We have to create CRUD APIs in terms of student management app. So first thing first, I'll create a version number 12 setup. So for that, I'm inside official website laravel.com. Click on developers, then documentation, and here we have version number 12 documentation. But I know the command that how to install this version using Composer. So let's go back to project terminal. Already we had a setup inside this crash course that is of WordPress application. Now this time I'll create one more setup. So let's say Composer create hyphen project space level forward slash level, and the setup name will be level hyphen API hyphen basics. Hit enter, and now we can see successfully it has started to install version number 12 application into a new setup into this class course folder. So just wait for a while because as we can see it is in progress. Now successfully, as we can see that installation now completed. So what I will do, first I will go into that folder. So cd level-api-basics. Then after, I will open that setup into my VS Code editor. So successfully, I have opened our API basics folder into this VS Code. Now next after it, I'll create a database and connect with this setup. Let's open first this .env. I will go and change this SQLite to MySQL. Let's uncomment all these lines of code, save all these changes. Let's go inside phpMyAdmin, click on databases, and then after level underscore API basics, hit enter. So first I will copy, click on create button, database created, and if I go here, let's say this is the database, username is okay, and password is also okay. So if I save these changes, now as we know that in this API development course, like inside this API basics, I want to create the CRUD APIs for student management app. So first thing first, I will also have to create a migration, and whenever if we migrate, it will create a table called students into database with columns as ID, name, email, and gender. Now next, to create our migration file, let's go back to project terminal, and here PHP artisan make migration. And I want to create a students table, so create students underscore table. Hit enter. Migration file created. If I go back to VS Code, inside project root, database, migrations, and here we have the students table migration. Now inside this table schema, let's add few columns. So first it will be for string, and inside this string I want the first column, it will be like the name, student name, and it will be 50 characters of length. Now next after it, also we need the email value. So string here, column name will be email, 80 characters, and also I want that the email value should be unique. And then after, I will take one more column. So table, this is of enumeration type, and inside here the column name will be gender, and the allowed values will be male, female, and other. So successfully, whenever if we execute migrate command, it will create a students table into database, and the columns will be ID, name, email, gender, created at, and updated at. So what I will do, let's go back to project terminal, PHP artisan migrate, hit enter, and now you can see successfully migration completed. If I go to a database, let's reload. And now we can see that successfully here we have all the default tables of Laravel, including the created one, that is students. And if I talk about the structure that has been created, that is ID, name, email, gender, created at, and updated at. Now we want two more files, that is a controller file and a model file. Model file which interacts with the database table called students. So first I'll create a model file. Let's go back to project terminal again. PHP artisan make model, and the model class name will be called student. Hit enter, and now you can see that successfully we have created our model file. Now we want a controller class file. Now in this case I will create a resource controller for API. So this time I need to execute PHP artisan make controller, and I will create, let's say inside API folder I want to create student controller, and this is a resource controller. But remember, inside resource controller also will have some methods which basically render the view template files. But I want that this resource controller will be only for APIs. So also we have to add one more additional flag, that is double hyphen, it means double minus API. So here the complete command will be PHP artisan make controller. I want a folder inside controllers folder. So API it will be student controller resource, and here it will be API. Hit enter. And now we can see that successfully it has created controller class file. Let's confirm. So first I will go into app folder, models, and here we have student.php, the model class file, and inside this HTTP controllers, here we have a folder called API, and inside this API, now we can see student controller.php. Now in this controller class, we'll have only those methods what basically we can use to create our resource APIs. Now next, after getting this controller class file and the model file, what I will do, I will go into this student controller. Let's go at the top of this file. I will import first our model file. So use student model. It will come from app models student. Let's open first, and here protected. Then I will use fillable property, and here I want whenever if I create any student, the data we need to insert into table as name, email, and gender. So these are the columns. So what basically we need to create any new student for students table. Let's go here. So already we have loaded. If I talk about first the index method, and one more thing, if I go to terminal, let's run php artisan route list. So right now we can see that these are the default routes what basically Laravel application has provided. Now what I will do, as we know that we have created a resource controller for APIs, now let's create first API resource route. So for that I want one more file inside this routes folder, and that will be api.php. So right now we can see that there is no file like api.php. So how to generate? To generate api.php, we have to run one more command, that is php artisan install :api. Let's go back to project terminal, and here I will execute command called php artisan install :api. Hit enter. And now we can see that it is now started to generate our API.php file. And now we can see that inside this installation process, now it is asking some question here, that is, one new database migration has been published. Would you like to run all pending database migrations? So I will go with the default value, that is yes, hit enter, and successfully now it has created. If I go back to folder structure, so I should see a file that is api.php inside routes folder. Now let's open this file. Now in this file, actually whenever if we install php artisan install colon api, it comes with auth sanctum. But in this very basic course, I tell you that we are not going to use any authentication. So what I will do, I'll simply go and remove all these lines of code. Now next after, simply let's use student controller class. So successfully, we have imported from app HTTP controllers API and student controller. Now next after, I want to create the API resource routes. So here it will be route colon like scope resolution operator API resource, and I want students, and inside second argument it will be student controller, and it's a class. If I save these changes, let's go again back to project terminal. If I clear and run the same command, that is php artisan route colon list, and now we can see that after adding a single line of code inside api.php, now this time we have additional routes, that is api forward slash students. So whenever if I call this URL, it will hit index method of student controller. And if I type API students using post request type, it will call the store method of this controller class. It means now this time we'll have all the APIs routes. Now let's get started to work over these methods. Back to project editor, then I will go into this student controller. So for index method, it means I want to list all the students what we have inside students table. So here it will be return response arrow JSON, and inside this simply student model, and I want to get all data. Now this is our first API what basically we have created to list all the students from students table. Now next after, if I want to store or create any new data, we have to use the concept of store method. So first let's start this index method. So to test our APIs, either we can use an extension that is called Thunder Client or VS extension for this VS Code editor. Otherwise, we can use the concept of Postman. So here, if I will open a new tab, now first we have to type the project URL. So let's get started all about to start development server. So PHP artisan serve started. If I open, now let's copy this project URL. If I go back to Postman, so this is our base URL. So what we can do, either we can create an environment variable inside this Postman. So what we can do, let's cut this base URL. I'll go into this environments tab, and here environments tab, click on globals, and then after here we have to pass the variable name, its type, and the initial value. So let's say that I want to call each time this project URL as the base URL to call our APIs. So inside environments, inside globals, and here let's pass base URL, base underscore URL, and the initial value will be the project URL. This is totally user defined. So I have typed base underscore URL. According to yourself, you can put any name inside this variable. Now if I go first, let's save these globals. Saved here. Now if I go, now instead of typing project URL, simply we have to type double curly pairs, and inside this double curly pairs, simply we have to type base underscore URL. Remember, this is the key what we have taken inside this variable. Now automatically this project URL now imported. So after project URL, I have to call API, and after API, I want to call only students. Now this API will call the index method, like the index method of student controller. So if I go here, let's say students. Now this time we are using get request type. Click on send button. And okay, here we have some HTML response. So what we can do, just go inside headers and add one more header, that is accept application /JSON. Again, click on send button. And here we have some error, that is the route API strings could not be found. And why it is not found? If I go API /students, and it is calling student controller index method, and I can see that it seems there is no error. So let's again go to our postman, and if I check the globals, so at last we can see here we have the /, and here again after here we have added a /. So after base URL, either we can remove this /. If I go and click on send button, and now you can see it is working. So this is the issue of extra /. So what we can do, inside globals, just go remove this /, from this base URL, save these changes from here, and if I go, let's add a // in front of API, click on send button, and again it is not able to find. Go to globals, it's okay. The current value, let's remove this // from here as well. If I go, click on send button, and now you can see that is working. So this is the issue of adding an extra / after base URL. So this is all about the index method of student controller class. Now let's work for this store method. It means I want to create a new student and save inside our database. Now to create any new data for students table, as we know that we want the values for name, email and gender. It means both fields are required. So what we can do here, let's request object, then I will use the concept of validate method in the same way what we did inside our CRUD based application. So here we have the field name like name, email and then gender. Let's add some basic rules. So name is required. It is of a string type. The email, it is required. But the value we enter should be a valid email value. And also I want that email value should be unique. So here it will be unique keyword colon, then after the table name, so the table name called students, and the column name from table, that will be email. So this rules means that the email value inside students table should be unique. Now in terms of gender, this is also required, and what the value we pass inside this gender field will be inside this in colon, either it will be male, female, other. Now whenever, if suppose if we have no error, so what we can do, let's put all those data inside this data variable, and then after I will call student model scope resolution operator, then I will call create method and simply pass data variable, and finally let's say return response. It will be JSON, and inside this JSON let's pass an array, and here status equals to true, and message will be, let's say, student created successfully. If I save these changes, now this time we have to call API /students using post request type. Now in that case it will call store method of student controller class. Let's go back to postman. I will copy this base URL /API/students. Let's open a new tab. Put here, this time I have to use post request type. Let's go inside headers. I will add accept /, it means application /JSON. Then inside body, let's choose form data. It will be name, email, and gender. So in case if we are not passing any data to this API call using post request type, consent button, and now you can see we have the validation error messages. Now let's pass some data. Click on send button after passing all these data, and now we can see student created successfully. So if I go back to our database, let's go inside users table, students table, and now we can see first student now created. If I go and create one more user with the same email value, let's click on send button, and now we can see the email has already been taken. Now here, now we have used one more API concept, and by the help of this API, now we are able to create some new data, some new students into our table. Let's quickly create some more user. Click on send button, student created. Let's create one more student. Click on send button, student created. Now if I go back to this list API using get request type, same API endpoint, click on send button. And now we can see here we have the first object of first student, second student, and third student. Now let's work for our next method of this student controller, and that is to display the single student data. So inside here, while calling this API method show, if I go back to PHP artisan route colon list, so we can see either we have to use get request type, and we can pass API forward slash students, and also into URL we have to pass student ID. So whenever if I pass the student ID into URL, it will call the show method of this student controller class. Now here I'll use the concept of route model binding. This concept already we had discussed inside our CRUD application. So like whenever if I pass the student ID into URL, so in that case I'll use not ID here, I'll use directly the model concept, and it will be student model. Let's create a student object. Now here what I will do, return response JSON array, and if I pass, let's say status equals to true, message equals to, let's say student found, and here data equals to student object. If I save these changes, let's go here. Now this time we have to call this API using get request type, but additionally we have to pass student ID into URL. So what we can do, I'll just copy this base URL API forward slash students. So already we have some students into our database with ID. If I reload, ID equals to 1, 2, and 3. So for example, if I pass the student ID equals to 3, let's click on send button. And now we can see that here we have some response, and this is status equals to true, message equals to student found, and here we have the student data, and look at here, ID equals to 3. Now successfully, this is the API that how to display the single user data. Now next, after this single student data API, now we have to work over update student API. So if I go back to project terminal, so in case of student update API, we can see that we have to hit using put or patch request type to this URL called API forward slash students, and additionally we have to pass student ID, and this URL will call the update method of student controller class. Let's go back to editor. So after this method, next we have to work over this update method. Now in the update method, also we have to use the same condition, that is route model binding. So in this case, it will be student like the model and student object. Let's correct the object name properly. So student. In this case, also we'll use the concept of request object, then validate method, and here name, email, and gender. Now, in case of all these rules, remember inside our store method, here we have used require, but in this case, either we can update the name value or we don't. So in that case, here we have the rules as sometimes. Now this is a Laravel rule. Now what the value we pass will be a string type, and for email, it will be also sometimes email. What we pass or the string what we pass should be a valid email value. Then after is unique or unique here, the table name will be called students, the column name we have called email, And also, like what the email we pass while update, remember, only we have to update with that student ID. So here, what we can do, we have to add one more parameter here, that is the table name, column name, and the value. So for value, I will concatenate with this student object, and we get of this email property. Now in case of gender, it is also sometimes type here, and in what the value we pass, it will be male, female, like male comma female comma other. Now if suppose we don't have any error, so in that case what we can do, simply either we can use if statement or simply student object, then I will call update method, and inside here request or all. Or it's better, either we can store all those data into this data variable, and simply we can pass this data into this update method. But here I'll use the concept of update all. And finally, let's say return response, not resolve, response arrow JSON. And here let's say status equals to true, and message, let's say student updated successfully. And then after put a semicolon, save all these changes. Now if I go back to Postman, so first I will go and let's copy this one, the base URL API /students /student ID, open a new tab. So in this case, I will use the concept of patch method. Either we can use put or patch. In case of if suppose I want to update each and every column of table, so in that case we have to use put method, and I want to update only a single information, single data. So in that case we have to use patch request type. So I will use patch request type. Then I will go to this buttons. Let's add accept. It will be application /JSON. Then after into URL, so for example, I want to update the informations of this third number user. It means I want to update, for example, the name, email, and gender, all these values. So for that, what we can do here by using patch request type, student ID, let's go inside body, form data, and here let's pass name, and I will pass the value, this one for email at the gmail.com, and for password, not password, gender, and female. So after passing all these data to this ID equals to 3, let's click on send button, and now we can see student updated successfully. So if I go back to table, let's click on this browse button, and okay, I can see that there is no reflection of the updated value to this student data. And why it has happened, let's go back to our code. And here I can see that there is no error, I think, inside code. So what we can do, let's go back to Postman, and before going, if I go, let's copy print r, that is request, or let's check that what basically we are getting into this request object. Save these changes, go to Postman, click on send button, and now we can see that there is no data receiving into a method. Okay, actually we are using the concept of patch request type. So in that case, remember, we have to use the concept of method spoofing, because we are submitting form data. So while submission of form data, we have to dynamically change at runtime the method request type. So simply here we have to select post request type so that this form data will be submitted, and additionally we have to use underscore method here, and here we have to put catch request type. Now this time, whenever if I click on send button, and now we can see that successfully we are calling our update method, and additionally we are passing all this data. So what we can do, let's go and remove this die from here, save these changes, click on send button, and now you can see student updated successfully. If I go, let's reload, And now you can see all data now updated. Now next, after this update API, now finally we have to work over the last API of this first basics concept, and that is delete student API. Let's go back to editor, and here I will work finally for this destroy method. So instead of using ID, I'll use the concept of route model binding. So here it will be our model called student and student object. And finally, whenever if we call this route, let's go back to PHP automation route colon list. So if we want to delete any student, we have to use the concept of delete request type. Then we have to call the API URL as API / students, and additionally we have to pass student ID. Now in that case, it will call the destroy method of this student controller class. Now here, after taking the student ID, it means the entire object of that student. Simply student object, I will call delete method. Now here, let's say return response JSON, and it will be status equals to true and message equals to, let's say, student deleted successfully. Save these changes. Let's go back to Postman. Now this time, if I will copy the base URL /API /students, then student ID, open a new tab, paste here. Now this time we have to select delete request type. Now whenever if I click on the send button, it will send this ID called 3, and I can see like 3 ID exists into table. So we will get a student object of this third number row into this student object variable. And finally, by using this delete method, it will delete that row from our database. So if I go click on send button, and now we can see student deleted successfully. So if I go, let's reload, and now we can see data deleted. So successfully, now we have completed one more journey to this interesting course, and that is how to create APIs like the basic APIs inside this version number 12 application. Alright friends, from this video topic, we'll start another interesting concept of version number 12 application, and that is how to create REST APIs inside Laravel version number 12 using Sanctum authentication. Inside last video topics, we have seen that how to create based application and how to create basic APIs. Now this time also we'll create some APIs, but this time we'll see the additional concept that is all about Sanctum authentication. So first thing first, let's create a Laravel 12th version setup again into our local machine. So I will then go into a project terminal. Here I will use the concept of composer create hyphen project level /level. I will call it as level hyphen API hyphen Sanctum, level APIs hyphen Sanctum. Hit enter, and now we can see installation process now started. So we need to wait for a while, and successfully, as we can see that the installation setup now completed. So what next? Simple. Let's go into that folder. So cd level hyphen APIs hyphen Sanctum. Now what I will do, I will open this setup into my VS Code editor. So successfully, I have opened into my VS Code. Now next I'll create a database and connect with this application. Let's go first inside this .env file. Then after, I'll change from SQLite to MySQL. Let's uncomment all these lines, and inside database, I'll create a database called level underscore APIs underscore Sanctum. Let's copy this DB name, go to browser, phpMyAdmin, click on databases. Now inside this database, let's put the database name, click on create button, and now we can see database created, and successfully it is also connected with this application. So as we know that inside this API development course, we have to create some APIs, and that APIs will use all about the concept of Sanctum authentication. So here in this course, what is the plan? So plan is very simple. We'll create a control class called API controller, and inside this controller class, we'll create some method to register user, to login user. Then we'll have a profile API, like to get the user profile information, and then we'll have our logout API. So here, as we know that we have to use the concept of Sanctum authentication. So let me tell you, Sanctum is a composer package, but by default inside these recent versions of Laravel, it comes by default with Laravel Startup. Only we have to run a command called php artisan install API. So before running that command, if I open composer.json, and we can see inside this require object, we don't have any package called Sanctum. Now let's go back to project terminal, and here if I run command call php artisan install API, hit enter. Now it will create a file first api.php. So also we go inside routes folder. We don't see any file called api.php. So automatically whenever this running process of command will complete it, so automatically it also creates a file called api.php. Now we can see api.php inside this routes folder. Let's go back to project terminal. Now it is asking some questionnaire that one new database migration has been published. Would you like to run all pending migrations? Let's go with the default value. So hit enter, it will take the yes value, and now we can see automatically it has created 4 different tables inside our database. So if I go to confirm, and now we can see inside this database, here we have all those tables. Now after this database, let's go back to project editor. So as we know that inside this course, we have to create a file called API controller.php. It's a controller class, and inside this controller class, we have to work for registration API, login API, profile API, and logout API. So let's create first our API controller class. Go to project terminal, all clear. So PHP artisan make controller, and it will be, I need to first create an API folder, and inside this API folder I want a file called API controller. Hit enter, controller class created. If I go to app SMTP controllers API, and here we have API controller.php. Now all these APIs, what basically we create, these all related with users table. So by default, also Laravel provides a model called user.php. And additionally, also we had installed a package that is called Sanctum Authentication. So what we can do, simply let's open our API controller.php, and here I will import use user model. And one more thing, also we have to use the concept of Sanctum, and that is going to generate some API tokens. So what I will do, first I will open user.php, and here let's say use as API tokens, and it will come from Laravel Sanctum as API tokens. Now let's copy. After this notifiable, just put here, save these changes, close this file. Now inside this API controller, first I will create registration API method. So it will be public function. Let's call register. Then after login API, so public function, let's call login. And after login, I will call, let's say for profile API, so it will be public function profile. And finally we want for the logout API, so it will be public function logout. Now let's first start with this register. So here what I will do, I will pass request class object, and here to register any user what the informations we need. So if I go to users table to get the idea, inside users table, go to structure. Now we want name, email, and password. I will add one more field, that is password underscore confirmation. So here inside this registration API, we want name, email, password, and I will add one more field called password confirmation. So here, so first, let's implement the validation. So request object, I will use validate method, array. Let's put the field names called name, email, password, and it will be not actually, I will add confirm password. Automatically I will put a rule which adds password underscore confirmation. So inside this name, it is required, contains string value, it is required string value, not a string. The string what we pass should be a valid email pattern, and also it will be unique. So unique, the table name we have users and the column name we have email. And then after inside this password, it is firstly required, and also we want confirmed here, like we want also a field called password underscore confirmation. So it means whenever if I add this rule in front of this password, so password will be the field name, and after that we have to add underscore confirmation, like for this rule. If suppose if we don't have any errors, so in that case what we can do, user scope resolution operator, I'll call create method, and inside this simply request and call value, and then after let's return response.json, and here let's say status equals to true, message equal to user registered successfully, and I think here we have some spelling mistake. So if I save these changes and let's create some API route, so I will open routes folder, api.php, and after installation of Sanctum authentication, it means PHP authentication install colon API, automatically it has given a middleware called auth Sanctum. So here I'll just go and comment these lines of code, and let's import our API controller. So API controller from API folder. So route here, I'll call first post request method, let's say register, and it will call API controller, and from API controller I will call the method called register. Now next, after this API endpoint, either we can use the VS Code extension, that is Thunder client, to check this API endpoint, or we can use Postman. So I will prefer Postman. So first we have to start the development server of this application. So here let's say PHP artisan serve. Development server started. So let's first open. I will copy the project URL. Let's go to Postman, and by using environments globals, here we have created a global variable that is called base URL, and inside this base URL, here we have the project URL. Let's open a new tab. So I will paste, we have to use post request type, and the URL will be called localhost, and here simply call register. And also before that, we have to pass API. But here, this project URL is inside a global variable called base URL. So what we can do, just remove this base URL, double curly pairs, and inside this double curly pairs, we can use the global variable or the environment variable of this Postman called base URL. So after base URL forward slash API forward slash register. Now if I go again to this Postman, inside this project terminal, and if I type PHP artisan route colon list, and now you can see here we have an API route that is using post request type. So project URL, after that we have to pass API register. It will call a method that is register from this API controller class. Let's start development server. Now whenever if I call this API using post request type, click on send button, and okay, let's go inside headers. First I will pass accept. It will be application forward slash JSON. Hit enter. And now we can see here we have some validation, that is the name field is required, email field is required, and password field is required. And this is because we have implemented the concept of validate method. Now what next? Let's pass some data. So here what we can do, go inside body, inside form data. Let's put a key called name. Then we have to put a key called email and password. And here I'll create myself as a first user for test at mail.com, and password is from 1 to 8. Click on send button, I'll get one more error because we have used one more rule called confirmed. And as I told, whenever if we use this confirmed rule, it means we have to add one more field, that is password underscore confirmation, and inside this field we have to pass the same value what we have passed with the parent field called password. Now, after passing all this data, click on send button, and now we can see user registered successfully. Let's go back to our DB table. If I go, let's click on browse, and now we can see successfully we are able to create our first user by calling registration user API. Now let's create another API that is for login, and whenever if we implement the concept of login API, so after successful login it will create a token value, and that token will be known as a Sanctum token. Let's go here, then I will go to this login method and here request. So to get access over this request object, request class and request object, let's add some validation first. So I want for login, the value will be email. It is required valid email value. Then after I want a password. It is required. So here, after getting the email and password, first thing first, I have to check that any user exists with this email value. So here, let's say user check by email. So what to do? User, then I'll use where method email, and the email we get from this request and email. Then after, I'll get the first row user exists, let's say user. So if user exists with this email value, now next we have to check the password. So what I can do, if the user object, it means we have the data. So in that case, let's say if I'll use the concept of hash facade. So hash, it will come from eliminate support facades. So simply if I will use, automatically it will be imported at the top of this class file. Now we can see it is coming from eliminate support and facades. Now from this hash, I will call a method scope resolution operator, and that will be checked, and inside this we have to first pass the value. This is the plain text value what we can get from this request and password, and inside the second value we have to pass our hashed value. So whenever if we are able to find the user by the help of this email, it means inside this user object also will have the hashed value. So user and password. So successfully, this is the concept of password check. If user exists with this email and password is also okay, so in that case, let's generate a token value. So here, token equals to user object. Then I will use a method called getToken, and here let's pass token name. I'll simply call it as for the time being my token, and here I want to get the plain text value. Now save these changes, and here let's say return response JSON, and inside this JSON let's say status equals to true, message, let's say logged in successfully, and then after if I pass another key called token, and here we have the token value. Otherwise, in case of password mismatch, I'll simply copy, go here, let's use else block, put here, and I think here we have some error, and this is like using this else block. So I will fix that, but let's do some update here. So false, and here password didn't match. Let's remove this token key, and I will add one more else block. So let's copy, go here at the parent label of this if block, and in this case it will be status equals to false, and here email is invalid. Save these changes, and it will be invalid if I save these changes. And here if I go first wrap this user object, let's say not empty. If it is not empty, Then we go and check all about this hashed password, and if this plain text value will matches with the hashed value of this user object, so in that case we'll generate the plain text value. This is something plain text token. Save these changes. Now automatically I think that everything is okay of this login API. Now let's test this API endpoint. So let's go first inside this API.php, route here, post request type, let's call login, and here it will be called API controller, and from this class I will call this login method. So what I will do, let's go back to Postman, and here I will copy this API URL, open a new tab. Let's use post request type, and this time I will call API forward slash login. Go inside headers, let's use accept, and inside this accept let's pass a value application forward slash JSON. Inside body form data let's use a key called email and password. Now here, for example, if I don't pass any value, let's test all the cases. We can see email field is required and password field is required. Then now let's pass some value. So here, if I pass the correct password, I can see like 1 to 8, and here we have 1 to 8, but email is invalid. We got send button, and now we can see email is invalid. Now if I pass the correct email value, I will copy, just put here, but in this case password is invalid. We got send button, and now we can see password didn't match. Now if I pass the correct password, we got send button. Now this time we can see status equals to true, message equals to logged in successfully, and here we have the Sanctum token value. Now this token we can use to authorize to authenticate while calling our profile API and logout API. Now this time inside API.php these two routes are open. It means before calling all these API we don't need any token value. But whenever if I call the profile API and the logout API, we want a authenticated token value, and that will be Sanctum token value. Now after this we have to start the concept of profile API. So first let's create the API route of profile. That is a protected API route. So here route I'll use group method, and inside here let's pass an array middleware. As I told, after installation of PHP Artisan install colon API and Sanctum, we get a middleware that is called auth column Sanctum. Now here, let's pass an array, put this value, and then after, I'll use the callback function, and inside this callback function, actually this is a group of block of routes which is protected using this auth Sanctum. Now here, let's create a route. So I'll use get request type to call our profile API. This will call from API controller, and from that class I will call this profile method. Now let's go inside API controller. So whenever if user will pass with the authenticated token value and hit this profile method, so automatically user data equals to auth helper function and user method. Save these changes, so return response JSON, and here if I pass let's say status equals to true, profile data, or let's say message profile data, and here it will be data equals to let's say user data. If I save these changes, and here we have some error that is undefined method user. So first let's test inside our API endpoint. So I will go copy this URL, open a new tab. Let's test here. I'll use get request type, but this is authenticated. If I type instead of login, this will be profile. Click on send button. And if I go to headers, let's first add accept application JSON. Click on send button. And now we can see unauthenticated. So it means before calling this API, because it's a protected API route, so we have to pass an authenticated token value. So what I will do, first I will go to this login API. I will copy this token value, what we had generated, and inside these headers, let's add a key called authorization. Then inside this value, bearer, after bearer, put that token value, and if we pass this incorrect, click on send button. Again, it will be unauthenticated. And if I pass the correct value, click on send button, it will call the profile method. And from profile method, now we are able to get the user data. So now next, let's create our file API of this course, and that will be our logout API. Let's go back to project editor. I'll go to this logout API, and also this is also protected. So first I will go inside this API.php. So let's say route using get request type, the URL will be logout, and here API controller, and from this class I will call this logout method. So simply the token what we have generated for that user, simply we have to delete that. So here auth helper function, then user method, and after user I will call tokens if suppose we have generated more than one token for a single user, or token should be deleted, not token, it will be delete. And finally here let's say return response JSON. So status equals to true, and it will be message equals to user logged out. Save these changes. Now if I go to Postman, let's copy this profile API endpoint, open a new tab, paste here. Again we have the same request type, that is get request type, but instead of profile, this time it will be logout. If I click on send button, again we get unauthenticated. Let's go first inside headers, accept, it will be application/JSON. Click on send button, as expected, unauthenticated. Now here, if I go to the login API, let's copy this token value, and if I go to headers, then add authorization, then bearer, space, the token value, click on send button, and now we can see user logged out. So user logged out, which means that the token what basically we have used to get the profile information, now this time it becomes invalid. So for the same token, if I click on send button, and now we can see unauthenticated. So it means if we want to call again this profile API, again we have to regenerate a new token for that user. Now this is the overall concept that how to create APIs using Sanctum authentication. And one more thing, if suppose anyone asks that how to get the user ID, so in that case this is the complete user information. If we want to get only the ID, so it will be ID equals to auth helper function, then user, and I can call this ID property. So if I save these changes, let's go here inside this login API, let's create a new token created. So if I copy, again go to our profile API, and in this case if I pass the new token, you can send button, and now we can see inside this ID equals to 1, which indicates that the current logged in user ID. So successfully, now here we have completed one more advanced topic of API creation inside this version number 12 application. Now let's create our next API advanced concept, and that will be using passport authentication. Alright friends, inside this video topic, we'll discuss the concept that how to create REST APIs inside this version number 12 application using passport authentication. So inside this video topic, also we'll see the concept of registration API, login API, refresh token API, profile API, and logout API. But this time, instead of using the concept of basic API, Sanctum API, now this time we'll use another authentication, and that is passport authentication. So first thing first, I want to create a setup. So let's go back to project terminal, and here composer create hyphen project, and it will be level/Laravel, and I will call it as Laravel APIs hyphen, not password, it will be passport. Hit enter. Now as we can see, our installation process now started. Now successfully, as we can see that now setup completed. So what next? Simply I'll go into that setup first. So cd level-apis-passport. Now inside this folder, I will open this setup into my VS Code editor first. Successfully open. Now next I will connect database with this application. So just I will go into this .env. From SQLite, it will be MySQL. And here, let's uncomment all these variables. And inside this database, I'll do like Laravel APIs and passport. Let's copy this DB name. Then I will go to phpMyAdmin, click on databases. Let's create this database. Click on create button. And now we can see database created. And here, already this database now connected with this application. So what next? As we know that inside this API development course, we have to use the concept of passport authentication. So here, I need to execute a command called php artisan install :API. But remember, this command already we had seen inside last year's topic where we had used the concept of Sanctum authentication. So in this case, what we can do, it will be php artisan install :API. Now instead of using Sanctum like the by default, I want to use called passport. So this is an extra flag we need to pass while running this API install command. So what we can do, just go back to project terminal. So php artisan install :API and it is for passport authentication. So just pass passport as a flag. Hit enter. And now we can see our installation process now started. Now inside this installation, it is asking some question, that is, would you like to use UUI IDs for all client IDs? I will go with the default no value. Hit enter. And successfully API scaffolding installed, and this is has API tokens. This time we have to use inside user model, and that will be from passport package. So what next? So after installation, if I go to php artisan command list, php artisan, hit enter. Now if I scroll up, and now I can see that inside this command list, here we have a separate section that is called passport, which contains lots of command. But from these command, I need a single command to be executed called passport:client. Why need to execute this command? Because whenever if we execute this command will create a client, and that client will issue access token value. So here, what we can do, php artisan, it will be passport:client, and I need to pass a flag called personal. Hit enter. Now it is asking about what is the name of the personal access client. So I will call it auth API. Hit enter. Now successfully, as we can see that it has created a client, that is client ID equals to 3, and here we have the client secret. Now what next? So after this Laravel personal access client, let's go inside our setup. Then I will go into this config folder. Let's open auth.php. Now inside this auth.php, if I scroll, here we have web guard. Now let's create one more guard. So I will copy, paste here. Instead of calling web, let's call API. And inside this driver equals to session, this time driver equals to passport. Now after this auth.php, now let's go inside this app folder, open models folder, user.php. Now inside here, this time I will use has API tokens, and this has API tokens will come from passport. Let's copy these has API tokens and just add here. Save these changes. Now what next? So if I go to a routes folder inside api.php, and now you can see after installation of php artisan install :API passport as a flag, now it has given a new middleware to protect our protected API's routes, and that is auth :API. But in case of Sanctum, it was auth :Sanctum. Now in this video topic, what I will do, I'll create an API controller class, and inside that API controller class, we'll have some methods like registration API, login API, profile API, reference token API, and logout API. And one more thing, inside registration, also I'll try to upload profile image. But here, I'll do registrations using users table, and by default inside users table, we don't have any column called profile image. So if I go inside database, inside migrations, and if I want to open a migration called users table, so inside this table schema, we don't see any profile image column. So what we can do, let's say table, I will add text field and let's call it as profile underscore image. And this field will contain null value as well. Now, after adding this profile image as an extra column inside users table, we have to remigrate this users table inside our database. So how to remigrate? So it's very simple. If I go back to terminal and here PHP artisan, let's migrate, colon refresh. And in this case, I want to specify the path only for users table. So how to do? If I go back to folder structure, that migration is inside database folder, migrations folder, and here we have the migration file name. So what I will do, simply I will copy the file name. Let's copy, go here inside terminal. So that path is inside this database folder. So database, then we have to go inside migrations folder, and here we have the migration file name. Hit enter. Now successfully it has been completed. So if I go back to our database, let's reload. And if I go to users table, click on structure, and now we can see that inside this users table, here we have an extra column that is called profile image. Now next after it, I want API controller class. Let's again go to project terminal. So PHP artisan, let's say make controller. I want to first create an API folder, and then after I want a file that is called API controller.php. Hit enter, controller class created. If I go to editor, let's close first all these files, and then after I will go inside the app folder http controllers API and API controller.php. Now in this file, first let's import our user model, and then after inside this API controller class, I'll create for registration API, and in this API I will pass name, email, profile image, password, and the next field will be password underscore confirmation. So the method will be public function and it will be register. Then if we go for the login API, so in this case login API we have to pass email and password. So it will be public function and login. Then after, next we have for the profile API, so public function, and I will call it as profile method. Then after, refresh token API, and it will be public function. Let's call refresh token. And then after, we'll have the last API method, and that will be for logout API. So public function, I will simply call logout. Let's create our API route. So I will go inside our routes folder. Then I'll open api.php, and here let's first go comment these lines of code. Now we have to import our API controller class. Import it. So here the route will be for registration API. So it will be post request type. Let's call register. We'll go inside API controller, and I have to call register. Then after, route here, post request type. This is for login API controller class, and this here we have to call our login method. Then after, we'll have profile API method, refresh token API method, and logout API method. And all these API methods will be our protected API routes. So here comes the concept of middleware. So group, and inside this group, let's say middleware and we have to use call auth colon API, and inside here pass callback function, and inside this callback function route I'll use get request type. First we have to call our profile API from API controller class, and it will be profile method. Let's copy, put two more times. This is for refresh token, and here if I copy the method name, let's copy, put here, and finally for logout API. So successfully here we have the API controller class, and here we have the API.php with all APIs routes. Now after this API controller and this API.php, now let's get started all about the development concept over first API method for this registration API. Now here I'll go first inside this method signature, and it will be request class, request object. So here it will be request, validate method, name, email, then password, and here we will have call profile underscore image. Let's put the field validation rules. So it is required string value for email. It's also required that it will contain a valid email value. It will be unique into users table, and the column name will be email. Password, it is required, and also it is confirmed. It means we have to add one more field called password underscore confirmation profile image. It will contain the null value as well, and what the value we pass inside this profile image will be a valid image value. So successfully after passing all these values, let's check first image available, and if image available then we have to upload, and in case of upload option I'll use the concept of storage folder, app folder, public folder, and inside this public folder I'll create one more folder called users. If, and inside here let's say request object, if it is containing any file, so has file, and the file name with call profile underscore image. So in that case what I will do, let's say request file method profile underscore image. Then I will use the concept of store method. We have to upload inside users folder, and that folder is inside the public disk. After that here it's a data, and I will assign inside this profile underscore image. And one more thing, if we have no errors, so in that case all data, like all the valid data, will be stored inside this data variable. Now, after all these lines of code here, let's say user, scope resolution operator, create method, and simply pass data. And one more thing, actually here, what the keys I am using called name, email, password, and profile image, all these columns as it is the column name of this table. If suppose in your case, if it will be different, so in that case, you have to create a separate array, something like this. You have to first put your key name, like your key name, and here the value of it. But in this case I have the key name and the table columns are same, so that's why I have used called data. Now simply let's return response JSON, and here it will be status, let's say true, message user registered successfully. Let's put semicolon, save these changes. Let's start development server. So PHP artisan serve, hit enter, started. If I open, now let's copy our base URL. Let's go to Postman, and here inside this Postman, inside this environment tab, inside this globals, here we have a variable called base URL, and inside this base URL we have stored the project URL. Now here let's open a new tab. So this time if we want to call our registration API method, we have to choose post request type. Now here double curly pairs base URL, because base URL is the global variable or an environment variable of this Postman tool what I have created. After that API, after that register. So without passing any value, if I click on send button, and now we can see, okay, let's add accept application JSON, click on send button, and now we can see the validation error messages, that is the name field is required, email field is required, and password field is required. Now let's pass some values. So inside body tab, inside form data, if I pass name, let's say user1, email, let's say user1 at gmail.com, then here password will be from 1 to 8 and password underscore confirmation, it will be also from 1 to 8. Then one more key called profile underscore image, and in this case we have to upload a valid image file. So if we see here, we have the by default selected called text. Let's click on this. It will be a file option. So whenever if I go, then here we have the option new file from local system. Let's click on this button. Now we can see it is asking to upload some image. So for example, I want to upload this image here. Now this file has been selected. So whenever if I pass all these data, click on send button, and now we can see user registered successfully. So if I go first check our DB entry, let's click on browse, and now we can see all these data, and here we don't have any data for this profile underscore image. But if I go and confirm the data like the image what we have uploaded inside our storage folder, app, public, here we have users, and now I can see that the profile image successfully has been uploaded. Now the question is, then why we are not getting the profile image URL or the data inside this data profile underscore image? And I think the issue is of if I go to our models folder, user.php, so inside this variable, we don't have any option of profile image. So simply, let's pass here. Let's try one more user, go to Postman. So if I go with the same data, click on send button, we can see the validation error message, that is the emails had already been taken. So I will change, let's say user2, then I will go and pass the name of its user, call it user2, password is okay, and the profile image is also okay. Click on send button, and now we can see user registered successfully. If I go back to our table, let's reload, and now we can see in this case, now we have the value of this profile image. So successfully, now here we have completed our first API, and that is of user registration API. Now let's create another API, that is user login. Go back to project editor. So for login API, we have to go inside login method. First, let's pass our request class, request object, then after request validate method, and inside this array, let's say email, password. Let's put some form validation rules, that is required, and what the value we pass into this field will be a valid email value, and here it is required. Now then after, first we have to check that what the email we are passing, that email of any user exists inside our database. So here, let's say user equals to, I'll use the user model, then I will use the where method, let's say email, and here request email, and I will use first method. So if user exists, it means if not empty, user object. So in that case, it means user exists. Now next we have to check the password. So here I'll use the concept of hash facade, and this will come from eliminate support. So if I hit enter, now if I go at the top of this class, now we can see eliminate support facades and hash facade. Now from this facade, what I will use, I'll use check method. So first we have to pass the plain text value. Plain text value we can get from this request, and password, and then after user object, and this is password of our database. Then I will go here. Now it means if user is authenticated with this email and password, now let's generate the token value. So here token equals to user object create token. Let's pass token name. So I am passing, it's a my token, and here I need to generate access token value. Now here, return response JSON, and here it will be status equals to true, message equals to user logged in, and token equals to, let's pass this token. Otherwise, if I copy this response, let's create else block, and in this case, false here, and let's say password didn't match, and also let's remove this token key. And if I copy, let's create one more else block for the parent block. If I go and close this if, and here we have the another else block, let's put here, and in this case, email not found. If I save all these changes, now to call this login API method, we have to call this route called login by using post request type. Let's go back to Postman. So here, if I copy this base URL API register, open a new tab, and in place of register, if I pass login, let's select post request type, go inside headers, and here I will first pass accept application / JSON, and after inside this body form data, let's pass email and password. So here inside this email, I will use the second user, that is user2@gmail.com, and password is of 1 to 8. So copy and paste, click on the send button, and now we can see user logged in, and here we have the token value, and this token this time is of passport token value. Now this token we can use to call our protected APIs, that is profile API, our refresh token API, and logout API. Now let's first do an experiment with our profile API. Let's go back to editor inside our API controller class. So here, like this API method called profile method is a protected method. As we can see, it is inside this middleware called auth API. So here, what we can do, let's say user data equals to auth and user return response JSON, and inside this, let's say status equals to true and message equals to, let's say profile data, and it will be, if I pass data equals to, let's say user data. If I save these changes, let's go back to Postman. If I copy, if I go here, now to call our profile API, we have to use get request type. So get is selected, click on send button, and here it is taking some time. And if I go to headers, let's add accept application / JSON, click on send button, and as we can see, unauthenticated. So to access profile information, what we can do, if I copy this long text, that is a token value, let's go here inside this headers. If I add authorization, then bearer, the token value, click on send button, and now we can see profile data, and here we have the profile information. And one more thing, inside this profile image, we are getting the profile image path. Now the question is, if suppose I want to open this profile image into browser, how to open? So it's very simple again. If I go and let's say that inside this profile underscore image, I will add one more key. Let's say user data, and from this I will return, let's say profile underscore image. If I save these changes, if I go click on send button, so here we have one more key, but this value is incomplete. So what I will do, I'll use the concept of asset helper function. So asset helper function, if I put into it, save these changes, let's go back to Postman, click on send button, and now I can see that it is coming with the base URL. So here, if I copy this URL, go back to browser, let's open a new tab, hit enter, and I am getting 404 not found, and also I think that I'm not able to copy the complete path. So let's copy first this complete path of this profile image, open here, paste here, and again I can see not found. But the question is, if we have successfully uploaded our profile image into this storage folder, into this app folder, public disk, users folder. So the question is, why I'm not able to get this image? Now the answer will be, if suppose I want to open any public accessible file, either CSS, JavaScript or images, those files will be placed inside this public folder. So right now, this image right now inside this storage folder. So how to move this image inside this public folder? So I'll use a concept that is of storage. Remember the same concept we had seen inside our CRUD-based application. So what we can do, simply run a PHP artisan command. That command will create a link, a storage link into this public folder. So here, what we can do, PHP artisan, let's say storage colon link, hit enter, link created, start development server. Now if I go, let's reload. It is not able to find. Okay, because inside this public folder here we have the storage folder, and inside this storage here we have the images. So inside this asset we have to add storage as well. So storage forward slash and then concatenate with this profile image. If I save these changes, if I go click on send button, here we have the complete path. Now this time if I copy this URL, open into a new tab, paste here, hit enter, and now I can see the profile image of that user. So successfully, this is the concept of profile API of API controller.php class. Now let's go with this logout API, and before that let's work over this refresh token. So the concept of refresh token is very simple. Whenever if I want to generate a new token in place of last token, so simply we have to delete the existing tokens and then reissue the new token value. So here auth helper function, then user, first we have to get the existing token, then we have to revoke or remove all the permissions from that token, and now next we have to generate a new token value. So to generate, let's say user, I'll use the concept of auth helper function and user method. It will return the user data, and then after, let's say user, I'll use the method called create token, let's say my token, and I will issue a new access token. So here let's say token, in response let's say return response JSON, and here let's say status equals to true, message equals to token reissued, and here the updated token is inside this token key called token. If I save these changes, remember this is also a protected API route. So if I go, let's copy this URL, open a new tab, put here get request is okay. Now inside header I'll just copy this authorization. So inside header, first I will use accept. It will be application forward slash JSON, and then after authorization, bearer and the token value. So in place of profile also, this will be refresh. So after passing or changing all these things, click on send button, and now you can see token reissued. It means the existing token what we have used, it is no longer to use inside any of the API call. So here the same token here we have used. If I click on send button, and now you can see now this time it is unauthenticated. So this is the successful implementation of refresh token API. And finally for the logout API, here it will be auth user, and simply either we can use token delete method or simply revoke method, and here return, let's say response JSON, and inside here let's say status equals to true, message user logged out. If I save these changes, let's go back to Postman, copy this URL. If I open a new tab, get request is okay. Now this time we have to use call logout. Let's go inside this and I will copy the new token what we have generated. Let's copy the new token value and here inside this headers accept it will be application forward slash JSON authorization. It will be bearer paste the token value. So before calling logout API, if I go to profile API, let's use the new token to get the profile information. You can send button. Now you can see the profile data. Now if I call the logout API, you can send button, user logged out. Now if I able to call the same token here, if there is profile API, click on send button. And now you can see user unauthenticated. So successfully, now this is one more API concept we had learned inside this video course, and that is how to create APIs inside version number 12 application using passport authentication. Alright friends, inside this video topic, we'll discuss our last concept of this complete course, and that is how to create APIs using JWT Authentication. JWT stands for JSON Web Token. So first thing first, I'll create a new setup of version number 12 application. Let's go back to project terminal. So composer, create hyphen project, and it will be level forward slash level, and I will call the setup as level APIs JWT. Hit enter, and now we can see successfully our installation process now started. So we need to wait for a while, and successfully now setup has been completed. Now next, as usual, let's open the setup into our VS Code editor. So code dot not code dot cd level hyphen APIs hyphen JWT. Then after, I will open this complete setup into my VS Code. Successfully open. Then after, I will go into this .env file. Let's change first the SQLite to MySQL. Let's uncomment all these things. Now inside this database, I will call level APIs underscore JWT. Let's copy this database name. Then I will go to phpMyAdmin, click on databases. Let's pass here, click on create button. So successfully database has been created. Now this application is connected with that database. Now one more thing, as we know that while working with the APIs concept, also we need a file that is api.php inside this routes folder. So right now that file is missing. So what we can do, just go back to project terminal, php artisan, and here install :API. Hit enter. Now this command will generate the auth.php file inside routes folder, and additionally it will give the Sanctum authentication. But in this video topic, in this video course, I want to use the concept of JSON Web Token. But this is not an issue. First thing first, we have to generate api.php file. And successfully, now almost it has completed everything. Now here we have some questionnaire, that is one new database migration has been published. Would you like to run all pending database migrations? Let's go with the default value, that is yes. And successfully, now if I go back to browser, let's reload, and successfully all the database tables now created. Now next, let's install our JWT package, which is a composer package, into our Laravel application so that we can use the concept of JSON Web Token. Now after this database, we have to follow some simple steps to go with the step-by-step some commands and some piece of code to set up JWT installation into a Laravel application. So what are those steps? So here we can see inside this VS Code, here we have some steps. That is step number 1 to step number 7. So first thing first, to install JWT authentication into this Laravel setup, here we have a composer command. So I will simply copy, and one more thing, I will drop each and every step of this VS Code text into the description of this video. So just copy this step number 1, which is a composer command, and if I go to the composer.json, right now we can see that there is no option or no installation of this JWT-auth. So I will go into this project terminal, and if I type this composer command, hit enter, and successfully, as you can see, that installation process now started. Now successfully, as we can see that composer package now successfully installed into our Laravel setup. So to verify, if I go back to composer.json, and now here we can see JWT-auth. Now step number 2, simply we have to run this command. So let's copy, go inside project terminal, and here let's type this command, hit enter, execute it. Basically, it has copied a JWT or configuration file from this location to this location, and this location is inside our setup, inside config folder, and here we have a file called jwt.php. Now in the next step, we have to run this command to generate a secret key. Let's copy, go here, just paste, hit enter. So successfully, our secret key now generated. In step number 4, simply we have to go inside our auth.php, which we can find inside this config folder, auth.php. Now inside this auth guard, we have to change from web to API. So let's copy and put here. Then after into same file, that is auth.php, inside our guards, let's copy first this step number 5, and here inside these guards I will add one more guard, that is API driver equal to JWT and provider equals to users. Now then after, here we have the sixth number step. Now for this sixth number step and 7, next we have to go inside app models. Let's open user.php. Now here what I will do, I will copy this sixth number line, paste here, and inside this extends authenticable, then we have to go implements and simply JWT subject. Then after, we can see a red colored error. So to solve that, to fix that, here we have a line of code, that is two methods, that is get JWT identifier and get JWT custom claims. So simply let's copy these two methods, and at last let's paste here. So successfully, now everything has been completed from step number 1 to step number 7. Let's close all these files. Now next we have to create an API controller class, because inside this video topic, I want to create some APIs like user registration, user login, profile API, refresh token API, and logout API. And for all these things, we will use the concept of JWT authentication. So let's go back to project terminal, and here PHP artisan make controller. I'll first create API folder inside controllers folder, and then API folder I'll create a file, that is API controller.php. Hit enter, and successfully we are able to create our API controller.php file inside http controllers API and API controller.php. Now inside this file, first I will import, let's say, use user model. Then after, I'll create our registration user API, and while calling this API, I need to pass the data called name, email, password, and password underscore confirmation. Now here it will be public function and register. Now next, I'll create for login API. We need to pass email and password, so it will be public function and login. Then after, I'll create 3 more methods. This one is for profile API, public function, and I will call it as profile. Then after, for refresh token API, it will be public function. Let's call refresh token. And finally, we need one more method, that is for logout API. So it will be public function logout. Now successfully, these are the API methods of API controller class. Now next after it, let's open api.php from routes folder, and here let's comment this line of code. First import our API controller class, API controller class, and why it is not importing. So API controller. Now here we'll create first our registration API. So route using post request method, let's call register. It will be from API controller, and from that class we'll have the method called register. Then here let's say route using post method, it will be login. Here API controller, and from API controller it will be login. So these are two open routes. It means while calling these API routes we don't need any token value. Now next comes the concept of protected API methods, which means we need a token. So here it's a route. I'll create a group, and inside this group let's say middleware, and inside this middleware we'll use auth colon API. And inside this callback function, let's say route, I'll use get method profile API controller class, and from that controller class I will call profile method. Let's copy paste two more times. This is for refresh token, and from our API controller class this method we can call, so just copy, put here for logout, and it will be logout. Save these changes. Now next I will try to implement the first concept for this registration user method. Let's go here. So inside this registration, first let's use the concept of request class, request object. So here request validate method, and here I need data for name, email, email and password. So for this name field, it is required, and what the value we pass, that will be our string value. Email required, it will be a valid email pattern, and also it will be unique. Unique inside users table, and the column name is email. Password, it is required. If suppose we have all these data, no errors, so in that case, data will contain all the valid data, and here user create method, let's pass data, and here return response JSON, and inside this JSON status equals to true, message equals to user registered successfully, put a semicolon, save these changes. Now it's time to test this API. Go back to Postman. I'll open a new tab. So if you have started like from this video topic, so let me remind you that inside our previous topics, we had completed lots of things inside this course. That is, first we had seen CRUD application. Then we had created CRUD basic APIs. Then we had created APIs using Sanctum authentication. Then we had seen APIs using passport authentication. And finally, we are seeing inside this video topic, that is API using JWT authentication. So inside this Postman, already we had done a setting, that is environment tab. And inside this environment, here we have globals. And inside this globals, here we have a global variable called base URL, which is containing our initial value and current value, our project URL. So here I'll start the development server. So PHP artisan serve, hit enter, started. So this is our project URL. Open here. So what I will do, I'll use first the registration API. So post request type, then double curly pairs to call our environment variable, and here the key is base underscore URL and forward slash API forward slash register. Then after I will go into headers. Let's add a key, that is accept, and it will be application forward slash JSON. Consent button, and now we can see validation error messages as expected. Let's go inside body form data, and here I will pass name, then email, password, and one more rule I have to add inside this password, and that is, let's say, confirmed. It means after adding this, we have to add one more parameter, that is called password underscore confirmation. So here password underscore confirmation. If I go here, let's create a user for this email value sanjay.test@mail.com, when password is from 1 to 8, and inside this confirm password again from 1 to 8. After passing all these data, click on send button, and now we can see user registered successfully. If I go back to table, let's reload. Inside this users table, now we have a single row available. Click here, and now we can see the user data. So this is all about the implementation concept of user registration API. Now let's work for the login API, because it is the most important part of this topic, because this method is going to generate JWT token value. So here, request, and before that let's import request class, request object. I'll use validate method. So email, and also in login we need password. So it will be required, it will contain a valid email value, and it is required. Now next, after this validation, let's say that if we have no errors, so in that case I want to store the email and password inside this data key. Now here I'll use auth hello function, then I will call attempt method, and inside this attempt I will pass this data, and in return, if the email and password is valid, belongs to the users table, if user will be authenticated, so in return it will return token value. Otherwise, we'll have some error, that is invalid credentials. Now here, let's say return or if token. So inside this if block, let's say return response JSON, and inside this array, let's say status equals to true, message equal to user logged in, and here inside it data, not data, let's say token equals to the generated token value, and this token will be a JWT token value. Now let's go inside this else block. So here what I will do, simply let's copy, put here, and in this case status equals to false, and I will simply call invalid credentials. Let's remove this token key, save all these changes. If I go, let's copy this registration API URL, open a new tab, paste here, select post request type, instance register. I will call login, and inside these headers, first I will pass accept application JSON, then inside body form data, I will pass the email and password. So for example, if I pass something which does not belongs to users table, for example, email is okay, but here in place of password, that is of 1 to 8, if I pass 1 to 9 to this API, click on send button, and we can see invalid credentials. But whenever if I pass 1 to 8, it means the email and password, it's now valid. Click on send button, and now we can see here we have a token value, and this is a JWT token value. So this token we can use to call our protected APIs like Profile API, Reference Token API, and Logout API. Now let's go inside our API controller class. Now here, user data equals to auth helper function, and simply we can call user method. As usual, already we have done inside our Sanctum authentication and passport authentication. So return response JSON, and inside this let's say status equals to true, message equals to user data, and here data equals to user data. If I save these changes, let's go back to Postman. If I copy, open a new tab, we have to use get request type, but this profile API is a protected API, which means that inside header, along with this accept, also we need to pass authorization, and inside authorization, we'll have a valid token value. So if I copy this token value from here, from this login API, and without passing token, consent button. And now we can see unauthenticated. Now let's pass authorization. It will be bearer space token consent button. And now we can see user data. So this is a protected API call. Now let's see the concept of refresh token API. This is again very simple. It will be auth, and from this helper function, simply I will call refresh, and here token. Now let's return response JSON, and inside here status equals to true, message equals to refresh token, and here I will call new token equals to token. Save these changes. Now if I go, let's copy this URL, open a new tab, paste here, select get request type instead of profile. This will be refresh, and in this case also we have to pass these headers. So I will just copy all these headers from this profile API. So how to copy? Simply I will go into this headers, bulk edit. Let's copy all these two keys from here. You can click on this button, key value edit, now toggled. If I go here, click on headers, bulk edit, put these values, toggle, and now here we have accept and authorization. Now in this case, we are passing this token value, so automatically this token will be destroyed. It will generate a new token value. So here, if I click on send button, and now we can see here we have a new token. So which means that if we have the new token value, so in that case, this is not going to work. Click on the send button, and now we can see unauthenticated. Now to work with the profile API, now next I will just copy this new token value, go and replace inside this header, pass this key, click on send button, and here we have the profile information. So this is the another implementation of API that is called refresh token API. Now next, here we have the logout. It's very simple again, auth, and simply call the logout method. It's all done. If I go, let's return response JSON, and here status equals to true, message, it will be user logged out, semicolon, save these changes. If I go to Postman, copy this profile API. If I go get request is okay, in place of profile, it will be log out. And then after, if I'll copy this new token value because it is currently working, and here go to headers, accept, it will be application / JSON, and inside this authorization key, let's say bearer space and the token value. So whenever if I click on the send button, this token will be destroyed, and this token will no longer to be used inside this calling profile API. So let's go and click on send button. User logged out. Now the same token value here we have used inside this profile API. Click on send button, and now we can see unauthenticated. So successfully, step by step, now we have implemented all the APIs of this API controller class, where we had used the REST APIs concept of version number 12 application with JWT authentication. So finally friends, now we have completed this interesting journey, interesting course by going through step by step from word-based application to create REST APIs using JWT. So I hope after watching this complete course, now you will have the complete idea that how to set up a CRUD-based application, how to create basic APIs, how to create APIs using Sanctum authentication, how to create APIs using passport authentication, and finally, how to use JWT to create APIs inside version number 12 application. Now finally, here we have the complete overview of this complete course. So for this interesting course, all the source code I'll put inside a GitHub repository. That GitHub link you will find into this video description. So for this amazing video, amazing course, please hit the like button to like this video, subscribe to this channel. Now let's meet to our next amazing course. So for this video session guys, thank you for watching and have a great day.